It is Wednesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around, gather around. Behave yourselves. You don't have to behave yourselves too much, but you're on your own reconnaissance tonight. If you're having refreshments, let me know what you're partaking in. And make sure to come in and let's talk some football recruiting. It is signing day across the country. Signing day in East Lansing, Michigan. And ladies and gentlemen, Michigan State football has survived. Michigan State football has moved on. I'm here as your humble correspondent reporting that to you. A lot of you weren't really sure back in September when all the crap hit the fan. And even before that, I got to tell you, the wheels were losing air and they were wobbly and falling off, and it was becoming a ramshackle outfit. In one way or another, Michigan State had 8 years on that contract. A big, huge contract that some people in the athletic department did not want to sign off on, but it went through anyway over some people's head, which was a mistake. And although last year, 2022, a 5-7 season was not too terribly bad, and last year could have been pretty good if they would have kept a couple of players and things would have stayed on the tracks. They could have maybe gone 7-5, maybe a little better. But over the long haul, it was taking on water. And internally, there were some questions about how things were being handled at the top of that football program. You know what happened September 12th or whatever it was after the Richmond game, before the Washington game, Mel Tucker, things went south and the whole thing crumbled and collapsed. Harlan Barnett did a really good job keeping people in the program, as many as he could, keeping them in uniform, keeping them on the field so that Michigan State University could field a football team. I'm not exaggerating. He did a good job with that. Team went 4-8, almost went 6-6, but almost went 2-10. The Penn State game was rock bottom. Michigan State barely fielded a team, barely got a first down in the second half. Probably the most dominated I've ever seen a Michigan State football team. And I think only 36 players, scholarship players, are back who dressed that night. So it's a rebuild, a reboot. Rock bottom, you survived it. And from here, things look favorable. Things look good. Signing day, Michigan State signs, I think 18 players, has one more commitment that they're trying to go after, Jaden Walker from Portage. Really good job in the transfer portal so far. Efficient. What do they have? 6 commitments in the portal. Efficient. All those guys are proven college football players. And Jonathan Smith over there at the press conference today, his usual practical, pragmatic, measured, optimistic, orderly, organized self. He's excited and energetic about driving the big rig at Michigan State. It is what he thought it was after 3.5 weeks. He's excited that he was able to sell the program to former commitments and flip some people, and also bring the former Oregon State commitments in, show them around campus, and get them signed to become Spartans. And Michigan State has a good, solid, old school, new school football coach, believes in physicality, believes in all the practical elements of recruiting, believes in the transfer portal, and all those things. And Michigan State football is in good hands. You've survived, Michigan State fans. And when all the stuff was going down and Michigan State was looking for a new coach, a wise man, a friend of mine, told me, he said, Michigan State's going to rise again. Michigan State will rise again. That's what he said. And I was like, it's a good way to put it. I don't doubt it. After today, if I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm confident in saying that Michigan State will rise again if I'm a fan. If I'm a correspondent, if I'm an observer, I think Michigan State will rise again. They're in the process. Stair step 1 was put in place today. Signing day, Michigan State 18 high school recruits. Pretty good class. Number 54 in the country. I said a few weeks ago that it would be a very good class if they could get in the top 50. Number 49 in the country. I didn't think it was possible. 54. If they would have gotten maybe one more recruit, maybe Francis Brewu, maybe one more guy would have put him into the top 50 for what it's worth. I know some outlets have them in the top 40, including transfer portal recruits. Anyway, the recruiting class has been salvaged. And it's been done in a fashion that I think is pretty respectable. And that's what Jonathan Smith was today, respectable, diplomatic, organized, energetic, all those things. And he's a football guy, a proven football coach at Oregon State, where it's not easy to win, where he took over a program that was in the depths, and he turned it into a top 15 team last year, top 20 team this year, with physicality, type of football, a brand of football that people in the Midwest, people that are Michigan State fans, can respect and get behind. So good hire, good 3 weeks, 23 days he put this class together. They had 2 official visit weekends. That's all they had time for, because signing day was today, 2 official visits. And 2 official visit weekends, had to put together a class, figure out who they wanted, go after them, and did not have a lot of misses. They weren't able to get in on a lot of guys because so much of the country was committed, but the percentage rate of flipping some mid-majors, flipping one Big Ten recruit from in-state, almost flipped that defensive lineman from Pittsburgh, which would have made a difference in this class. Getting involved in quarterbacks from scratch, bringing one in from the portal from Oregon State, Aiden Childs, of course. Losing out on Tyler Cherry, very good 4-star quarterback recruit out of Indiana. Very impressed with him. Michigan State came in second. Like I said, the VCast, which is also on this channel somewhere, at the YouTube channel here at SpartanMag, if Michigan State had Aiden Childs coming in as a recruit, as a transfer with 3 years of eligibility remaining. Indiana has a transfer quarterback coming in from Ohio University with 1 year of eligibility remaining. Tyler Cherry looked at those 2 things. 1 year over here, 3 years over here, he went over here. If it had been the opposite, he would have been a Spartan. But if you're Michigan State, you'd rather have Childs, I would think. I mean, both of them are good. It's quarterback musical chairs. The good ones land at good places. But if they'd have gotten Cherry, this class would have been top 45 class, and I would not have thought that was possible. Got involved with Cherry, came in second last night, and today, boom, they were able to get Ryland Jesse out of California, number 7 quarterback in the state of California, flipping him from Utah State quietly. Had him in for a visit this weekend. No one knew about it. So Michigan State very resourceful, going after Tyler Cherry, coming in second, and then getting Jesse the next day. That's having your crap together pretty good. No guarantees that Jesse's going to be great, but they had to replenish that talent pool, the quarterback position, and they got that done. Also with Milivojevic coming in, flipping him from Ball State. Looked at him as a Midwestern guy, someone that could get in on, liked his film, moved quickly on him, got him flipped. In addition to Childs. So quarterback, like Jonathan Smith said today, at one point in time, 7 days into his regime as head coach, he had nobody on scholarship at the quarterback position. And then he had two weeks to put a recruiting class together from that point. And in the meantime, he had to assemble his staff, including going outside of his staff to hire a new defensive coordinator. And I think today he said 5 or 6 different candidates. The time and the research that you'd have to put in to getting that done, and he got it done, defensive coordinator, in addition to this class. I got to plug this thing in. Give me 30 seconds. 20 seconds. Otherwise the battery was going to run out. So putting together this class in 22 days and hiring a defensive coordinator in the meantime, ridiculously busy, and did not seem overworked today. I've seen Michigan State coaches go to signing day and be bleary-eyed about how much time they've put in and all those things, and did not have anybody flip to go the other way today. Michigan State tried to flip some others, didn't happen with the defensive linemen, and they still need defensive line help. But I'm just impressed with the resourcefulness, the pragmatic nature of things. Michigan State football has a real football coach in good hands. And you've all survived. And it's going to build from here. And we'll see what happens with the portal going forward. They're going to try to get some things going in February with a couple more signings. And then as they build toward winter football and spring football, and SpartanMag.com will be there to cover it every step of the way, as we have been since the beginning of this internet thing. Remember when the internet was new? If you're old enough, Spartan Mag was right there at the forefront. We've been bringing you some coverage thanks to you and the support you've given us over the years. So give us some more support with a like today. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you're not a SpartanMag.com subscriber, get over to SpartanMag.com. $1, try it for a month, test drive it. You'll love it. You'll get addicted. You won't be able to help it. It'll make you a better person. It'll make the world a better place for you. I might be overselling it a little bit, but SpartanMag.com, we'd love to have you as a subscriber over there. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a Magger. Also today, we're gonna have Jason Kaleb on. We'll talk a little recruiting with him. And also the great, the OG, the incomparable, Mr. Matt Dorsey is going to be coming through that door. He's going to be coming through that door, and he's going to be serious. He's going to be talking recruiting with us again. That's going to be fun. Matt Dorsey, longtime recruiting analyst for SpartanMag.com. Did a great job. He still has his ear to the ground in recruiting. And a few weeks ago, I said, Matt, he watches recruiting all the time still, but I said, take an extra close look at this class, because I knew the class was going to be assembled in a short period of time. It'd be easier to really just get to really focus in on it. I'm interested to see what he has to say, because he's an astute observer of Michigan State football and has been for years. We're going to get, I think, Matt Dorsey around 10 o'clock. We're going to get Jason Kaleb here really soon. And we've got questions. I got to get a couple things straightened out here. I don't have my usual cheat sheet, so I'm a little bit out of kilter. I apologize. We've got questions that are coming up from over at SpartanMag.com. I ask our subscribers at SpartanMag.com at the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative on all things Michigan State football, basketball, and recruiting. I invited Maggers over there to post some questions. We will be fielding those questions. Also, over the comments section, we will be entertaining questions over there as well. Question number one, Spartan Dog from Parts Unknown. He says, can you do a film evaluation on the three quarterbacks that Michigan State has coming in? I've got some film of a lot of these guys. We're going to be, I think we got Jason Kaleb right now.
Call from
Jason Kaleb.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hey, Jason, can you hear us?
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
Great. We got Jason Kaleb. We're bringing him in right now. Recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com has been doing a great job, along with Noah Sprunger, Jake Laskawa, Kenny Jordan, covering Michigan State football recruiting feverishly in the last 3 or 4 weeks and throughout the course of the year. As always, Jason Kaleb doing a great job. He was over at Spartan Stadium earlier today. He and I and Paul Konadike sat down for about an hour, did a VCast. You can find that here on the YouTube channel. Check that out later. Jason Kaleb, in the meantime, has gone home, done some more work, and we're going to ask him a little bit about that now. But Jason, after you drove home and thought a little bit more about this recruiting class, give us an overview of your thoughts about what happened today. Michigan State securing what right now is a top 60 class, number 54 in the country, a chance to climb a little bit more with Jaden Walker and some others. Your takeaways from today in the press conference over at Spartan Stadium with Jonathan Smith.
Yeah, I said this today, and I thought about it more just as the day's gone on. But when you look back earlier this month, at the beginning of the month, when Jonathan Smith first arrived in East Lansing, I always thought around 20 minutes or 20-man class would be around the benchmark for what would be considered a positive, a good number. And when I was looking at things then, if they wanted to hit that number, they would have had to land almost every visitor that visited campus. And that's exactly what they did. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. It's really impressive how they arrived in East Lansing and set the board with realistic targets. The guys that they brought from Oregon State over with them, those relationships will go a long way when developing those prospects. And I think it's just overall a really big positive to come away with 19 commitments, 17 signed here in December, and they have an opportunity to get that number above 20 in January if they find guys they like. And Jonathan Smith said today at his press conference that he expects there will be people out there unsigned, whether they're committed to other schools and did not sign their letters of intent, or uncommitted prospects. They'll be scouring out there for recruits that aren't signed, and they'll be looking to get those recruits on campus in January and continue this class as it winds down to only a couple more spots probably available for high schoolers.
And it's going to be interesting to see what names maybe are out there that did not sign. Usually there's incentive for players to go ahead and sign so that the teams that they're interested in know that they are with them. Have you detected that yet? Whether there might be some Big Ten players that went unsigned, or even interesting, group of 5 players. I'm sure that's what Smith and his staff will be setting out to evaluate in the coming weeks. Any names yet, or is it still early in that process?
That's something we'll be monitoring for sure at SpartanMag.com, and I'm still looking through the commitment lists from the day of each school and what they have done, and there's been surprises across the country that I'm still catching up with as I've been so busy with the Michigan State stuff. But the former Michigan State commitment Cameron Campbell, cornerback out of Tampa, Florida, he remains unsigned as of this moment. Michigan State had him on campus December 15th through 17th, and I think he was really feeling Michigan State. They have 4 defensive back commitments in the class right now. If they want to make room for a 5th, I think Campbell is a strong candidate for that. He's really familiar with the Spartans, but with him waiting until February, there is always a possibility that other schools get involved. And then another prospect to keep an eye on is Stone Chaney of Detroit Catholic Central, an in-state recruit. I've been talking to him a little bit, and Michigan State's been keeping him on the radar. He does not hold a Michigan State offer. As of right now, his only offer is Toledo, but he tells me that he's waiting till February to sign because he's starting to get attention from Michigan State, Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Kentucky. So that's an in-state defensive lineman right there that is getting some Power 5 interest, in a guy that Michigan State could possibly bring up to campus in January, and a guy that they could look to continue to pursue as things go on.
And I'm sure there'll be some others as well. Cameron Campbell, an interesting one, had committed to Michigan State back in June and then decommitted. I can't remember when he decommitted, but anyway, he decommitted in September. He got an offer from Oklahoma, West Virginia, and some others. But he's from Florida, from Tampa, I believe it is, and Tampa Bay Tech. Have you detected? He's a guy 6'1", wide receiver, somewhere between Dominic Long and Tony Lippett, that type of guy, wide receiver and defensive back, not as tall as Lippett, but a guy that does some good things as a wide receiver. He committed to Michigan State, then decommitted in September. You've spoken with him a little bit. What are some of the other schools that have gotten involved with him? I've not seen that he's taken official visits elsewhere, has he? And he did not sign today. Cameron Campbell from Tampa, DB. Any other schools? What's going on with him?
So Campbell did take an official visit to Oklahoma, which was, as far as I know, the only official visit he's taken since decommitting from Michigan State. Oklahoma was first offered him quickly after he decommitted from Michigan State in September, and since then Oklahoma's landed a couple defensive back commitments, including former safety commit Reggie Powers of Centerville, Ohio. He was committed to Michigan State and decommitted, and later found himself committing to Oklahoma. So I'm not sure if Oklahoma is pursuing Campbell anymore, but that's a school to watch. West Virginia also offered him this fall. Kansas State offered him this fall. As far as I know, he has not visited either of those schools, so that could be something that pops up in January. I think Indiana has also offered him. Louisville has also offered him. Like I said, it's unclear which of those schools are pursuing him hard, but with him delaying his signing, I wouldn't be surprised if any of them re-sparked some interest there.
Any particular reason that he has that he chose not to sign anywhere today?
I don't want to speak for him because I don't know this to be a fact, but what I would think is he wanted to sign with Michigan State today. I don't know if that was an option for him, but he did tweet yesterday that his decision was coming soon. So we'll have an answer on that soon if he does have a decision. I think he was fresh off the Michigan State visit, so maybe he didn't want to rush things. But I really do think that Michigan State was running really strong with him coming out of the weekend. So I'm not exactly sure which side of the table put the pause on things, but I do know Michigan State has looked really good for him. And another interesting note, as I looked at his Twitter here, he's been interacting with Michigan State fans, calling calling themselves his biggest fan, and he even retweeted a tweet about Spartan recruiting assistant Malik Gill getting a full-time position at Michigan State when he graduates. And for those who are on social media, Nick Marsh was also promoting that tweet as well.
All right, so Cameron Campbell excited about Michigan State recruiting from a position of strength, being frugal with scholarship offers and not just willy-nilly throwing them out there to put a class together. Cameron Campbell, I think, has got some good film down there in Tampa Bay. And as recruiting carries on into February, he's going to be a factor. You know, to your point earlier, I want to drive this home a little bit. The visitors that visited the first weekend, December 8th to 10th, second weekend, December 15th to 17th, the hit rate for Michigan State: Nick Marsh, committed, signed. Jaden Walker, committed, has not signed yet. Justin Denson, visited, committed, signed. Mercer Lunieski, committed, signed. Charlton Lunieski, committed, signed. Brandon Tullis, running back from Texas, committed, signed. Wyatt Hook, tight end, San Jose, California, committed, signed. Brady Pretzliff, flip, Minnesota, committed, signed today. Ma'Keem Frazier, running back, Frisco, Texas, committed, signed today. Tyler Cherry, visited, and he committed to Indiana. So the hit rate there, I mean, if things come in and you know, Michigan State is not, as a head coach, what you hoped it would be to these recruits, and your staff can't quite get it done, you get left at this point holding the bag with 8 or 9 commitments instead of 17, 18, 19. The next week, Andrew Brinson, committed, signed. Rustin Young out of Hawaii, Oregon State guy, committed, signed. Kikai Burnett, defensive end, Honolulu, committed, signed. Cameron Campbell, the player you just mentioned, still out there a little bit, might get him. Peyton Stewart from Washington, offensive lineman, Oregon State commitment in the past, committed, signed. Raheem Johnson, offensive lineman from Idaho, committed, signed. Francis Brewu, the one from Pittsburgh, Michigan State unable to flip him. Alessio Milojevic, I got that name wrong that time. I've gotten it right most of the time, but I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me on that one. Committed, signed, flipped from Ball State. Austin Clay, committed, signed, wide receiver, underrated, Ohio, committed, flipped from a MAC school. Jalen Thompson, Keyshawn Williams from Murfreesboro, former commitments, went ahead and signed. And then, of course, the transfer guys, Aiden Charles, Jack Velling, Jordan Turner, TJ Sheffield, got all of those guys. And a couple of others,
and you can
transfers that visited but did not, I don't want to say technically or officially, but, you know, they give physicals to these transfer portal guys that come in now, haven't done it in the past. Some of those guys might not have had the green light to commit to Michigan State after the physicals. And they didn't get those. But the hit rate on there, it's got to be close to 90% or more, and that's unheard of when it had to be done coming down the stretch, and they got it done. Go ahead.
Exactly. And just another name to add to that list, because we didn't have him on our original visitor list, is Rylan Jesse. We weren't aware of his visit when he first scheduled it, and that's another kid that they have on campus and closed the deal with.
Good one. And I'm impressed the way Michigan State kept that one on the back burner. Sorry about drinking into the microphone there. That's terrible. That's just amateur. I apologize about that. That's an error. But anyway, you spoke, speaking of the portal, Michigan State with 5 very good ones, in my opinion, in terms of just proven college football players. Aiden Childs, TJ Sheffield, wide receiver from Purdue, over 100 career receptions. Jordan Turner, inside linebacker. They need linebackers. They get him, a Michigander coming back to Michigan from Farmington. Was a spot starter at Wisconsin. Jake Velling, Pac-12 tight end of the year at Oregon State, follows Jonathan Smith and staff to Michigan State. Quindarius Dunnigan, defensive end, 6'3", 240, Middle Tennessee State, 255 I think he is now. I think heavier than that. Conference USA, second team, all conference, productive, defensive end. They need defensive ends. They've got a couple defensive ends and defensive linemen in the portal. Defensive line is an area of concern, and to go out and get maybe the best defensive lineman from Conference USA in the portal, one of the better group of 5 defensive linemen in the portal. Michigan State went out and got him. As far as I know, I don't know if Michigan State had any previous contacts with him. Went out and got it done with him. You spoke with Quindarius Dunnigan today, did you not? Did I hear you say you talked to him, Jason?
Yep.
Lost you there a little bit. Did you say you talked to him? So, Jason,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. I talked to him today, and it was a really good conversation.
And what did he? What did you learn from him? What did he say? I think you told me he strikes you as someone with a lot of leadership ability.
Yeah. The first thing that really struck me was when he talked about Jonathan Smith. He called him the most straightforward and genuine guy he's talked to during his recruiting process. Said he was able to sit him down and look him in the eye, and he felt a genuine sense of authenticity. And he said that really attracted him to Michigan State. His conversation with.
All right. So, Jason, I think we're losing you a little again. Did you move around the house or something, or is it going to be okay? All right. Technical difficulties, but Jason's got that story about Quindarius Dunnigan commitment. Middle Tennessee State. It's going to be at SpartanMag.com later tonight, if not tomorrow morning. And you can get all the information there from Jason Kaleb at that time. And some of the things Jason told me before we came on the show is that Dunnigan strikes him as someone who's got a lot of leadership ability, wants to come to Michigan State and get some things done and be a good teammate moving forward. Jason, are you back or are you gone? All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. What are some of the other takeaways with Dunnigan? What is he? Why Michigan State? And you mentioned he was impressed with Jonathan Smith, but what else? What are your other takeaways? All right. Yeah, can you hear me or no? All right, we're going to have to let Jason go. Jason, really appreciate your help. Jason thought there might be some problems with cell phone reception from where he's calling in from, but definitely got some good information for him while we had him on, and we appreciate him and all the work that he does at Spartan Mag, also the work that Noah Sprunger does, and Jake Laskawa, Kenny Jordan, and the great one, the original, Matthew Dorsey. Expect to have him on in about 15 minutes. Sorry about that, but I got to do that. I'm trying to keep my voice. I've been talking a lot today. I think Jason's calling
Call
back.
from
Jason Kaleb.
Hey, Jason, we got you. You doing all right?
Hey, Jim, does this sound a little bit better?
A little better. What do we have here? I just got an important text. Go ahead. With Dunnigan, and then we'll let you go because I know you have work to do and you've had a long day and you've been working really hard for days and days and days, and we appreciate it. Dunnigan, what did he tell you? What strikes you about him?
With Dunnigan, yeah, I was really impressed with that conversation. As you mentioned, he has been very productive with Middle Tennessee State, and he's going to head up to East Lansing now with 2 years of eligibility remaining. I was able to confirm that with him. He has a COVID year of eligibility, and he has a medical redshirt year from a back injury in 2021. But when I was talking to him, one of the things that really stood out was his message about Coach Jonathan Smith. He said that he's probably the most straightforward and genuine coach he's talked to during this recruiting process. And he said he was just able to look him in his eye and feel a sense of genuine authenticity. And he also really liked Joe Rossi and the way he fits into that defense, and the way Joe Rossi uses his defensive linemen in multiple ways. And he just struck me as a leader with the way he talked about when I asked him what Michigan State fans could expect from him, and he just said his work ethic and how much he is ready to work and get to know his teammates and grind with them in the off season and build an identity for this team. So I think that talking to him was really impressive. He just talked about iron sharpens iron, and he wants to get up to Michigan State and work with other players that are on an elite level, and that's one of the things he's most excited about. And he was excited about his commitment to Michigan State. He said he almost committed to Georgia Tech after a visit down there, but Michigan State came in just in time.
Wow, that's an important one. That's a big one. All right, I'll let you go now. We already signed off once, but I didn't want to keep you too long. But Jason, I really want to say publicly appreciate all the hard work you're doing, and there's a lot of Michigan State fans all over the world that are enjoying your work. And thanks, and keep on trucking along as Michigan State looks to add some portal transfers and also unsigned players as they move into February, one of which, Jaden Walker, we talked about him in the VCast earlier today, linebacker who I think is underrated. He's like number 24 in the state, but I think he's as good as Antoine Simmons was, and Antoine Simmons was number 6 player in the state when he was coming out of Ann Arbor Huron High School, I think it was. Jaden Walker, Portage, Michigan, linebacker. Michigan State's had him as a commitment since September. Like we said in the VCast, Michigan State offered him in September after they saw a few weeks of his senior film. His senior film is very good. Athletic, change direction to defeat a block, also can defeat a block with physicality. Same foot, same shoulder type of guy, well coached. You can see that at Portage. Is it Portage Northern or Central with Jaden Walker?
Northern.
Portage Northern.
Yep.
And so Michigan State had him as a commitment all along, all through the Mel Tucker catastrophe and the Harlan Barnett situation and the coaching search. And he was Michigan State property all along. And then USC came in, offered a scholarship, got him to visit last weekend. And a guy outside of the top 20 in the state of Michigan, USC likes him. That tells you what kind of player he is, and that's why I say he's underrated. I think he's a top 10 type of player. But you talked about it on the VCast earlier today, but that's one who's committed to Michigan State that did not sign. That recruitment is going to extend into late December, January, maybe even into February. Your thoughts on him and the last time you spoke with him, and what's your read on that situation?
Yeah, with Jaden Walker, you talked to, like we said on the VCast earlier today, he took a visit to Southern California at USC over the weekend of December 15th through 17th. And he spent the weekend prior to that, 8th through 10th at Michigan State. He's been really locked into Michigan State the whole time during his commitment, like you said, and USC came in with a late offer. And that's really been something that's intrigued him and his family members. And there's people in his circle that I think maybe prefer USC compared to Michigan State. And I think the kid himself at the end of the day will make a good decision for himself. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and from people that I've talked with, it's his decision at the end of the day. But I do know there's people in his circle that are definitely infatuated with the new USC offer. And there's also some people in his circle that maybe don't think the USC offer is the best fit for him. So he's conflicted right now, and he's going to wait till January. I think that could bode well for Michigan State, as Paul said in the VCast this morning. I think the worst case scenario for Michigan State would be him signing with USC, of course. And now they have the month of January to try to let that post-visit glow wear off and maybe even get him up to East Lansing one more time before the February period and get some of that momentum that should be easily won over with him. He's a kid that really loves Michigan State. He grew up watching the program, and I think he deep down he's been set on playing at Michigan State for a while now. So I think that at the end of the day, those feelings will be tough to beat. But like I said, USC is definitely worth monitoring for the time being.
All right, Jason, great information. Keep us up to date on that. Cameron Campbell's a good one in Tampa Bay, and also Jaden Walker at Portage, and some others, including the kid from Catholic Central. What's his name? Stone Chaney, defensive lineman.
Yep.
I've not looked at his film yet, but I'll be doing that real soon. Thanks a lot, Jason, for your help, and I'll be talking to you soon. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes, Jason Kaleb. Doing a great job at SpartanMag.com. Back to the mailbag here. Question number 1, Spartan Dog says, can you do a film evaluation on the 3 quarterbacks? We've done a little bit of that. Rylan Jesse just committed today, and I didn't know anything about him visiting, so I was looking at his film today, only the highlights. I want to see him like in a whole game, see if I can find one of those online somewhere. I want to see the incompletions. I want to see the decision-making process and all those things. 64205, Helix High School, La Mesa, California, had offers from Oregon State, Utah State, San Diego State, Nevada. Oregon State had recruited him previously. Number 7 quarterback in California. The ones above him, ranking-wise, in California, quarterbacks-wise, they went to Alabama, Stanford, Washington, Oregon State, Maliaki Smith, Oregon State guy that they had gotten before, number 4 in California, 5'11". What I don't know is whether Michigan State tried to go after Smith again. I think Smith, the previous staff had looked at Smith a little bit. Number 5 went to Colorado State, number 6 went to Nevada, and number 7, Rylan Jesse, was going to Utah State. Michigan State flips him. His highlight film, it's, maybe about 8 or 9 or 10 throws. I've got to look to find some more. Has some mobility. At 6'4", he still needs to mature into that frame. Tyler Cherry at 6'4" has matured into his frame by comparison. Jesse's a guy that's a little on the slimmer side, kind of like Kirk Cousins was when he was 17. Cousins was thin, but he had some good agility to him at the time. Jesse, not a statue in the pocket, but he's got some mobility And the highlight film does not really show him making multiple reads and going to work that way. I'd like to see some more of that. In his highlight film, he's almost always under pressure. So his ability to get out of trouble and make things happen, that's present. Decent release, decent arm strength, has some ability to throw on the run, which is important in this offense. What we don't know about his accuracy. Of course, on all highlight films, everything's a completion. That's why I want to see a whole game. I've not gotten stats on him yet. I don't. Maybe that was in the story we had earlier today. I'm not sure about completion percentage and his ability to read defenses. I'll be looking at that in the future. If the accuracy and ability to read defenses is there, he could be a keeper. What he is he's a scholarship guy that's going to come in and provide some depth initially. Not ideal to have a second-year player and 2 true freshmen as your quarterbacks. That's a young quarterback room, very young. And I'm sure the plan is not for all 3 to play, but they're there in case of emergency. So the highlight film is limited with him. Alessio Milivojevic from suburban Chicago, Chicagoland area, St. Francis. Finals twice, if I'm not mistaken. Watched his film a week ago. Accurate. 75% as a junior and a senior. Spoke with his coach, McMillan. Asked him, what did Michigan State's coaches, Brian Lindgren, offensive coordinator, and Jonathan Smith, what did they like about Milivojevic? He said accuracy. And Milivojevic is a guy that could throw on the run a little bit, run around a little bit. Team-oriented guy. Jonathan Smith described him today. What do you call him? A football rat? Football junkie? Something like that? Team guy. So, good, solid prospect. I'm not going to lie. Tyler Cherry, the guy that committed to Indiana, further along than these two. I'm not going to lie about that. Cherry was excellent. I said this before he committed. I thought that he was like a top 75 national type of guy. Underrated as a top 300. But Milivojevic, good flip, Ball State. And Jesse, good flip, Utah State. And, of course, Childs coming in from Oregon State. All kinds of arms, 6'4", good mobility. Good enough. He was a 4-star guy, big-time recruit by Lindgren and Jonathan Smith to get him out of California to go to Oregon State last year. Oregon State had DJ Uwe but Childs was good enough that they told Childs, as he progressed through camp and into the season, that he would get the 3rd possession of the game multiple times. So he got into real game situations to get some development there. And when Jonathan Smith and the staff came to Michigan State, they wanted Childs to come with him. And I heard that was in the works for a while. That was the plan. DJ Uwe has 1 more year of eligibility remaining, and I'm not sure Smith and his staff went after Uwe. He only had 1 year left. Do you bring him? Uwe accuracy was just so-so. I think he was like 56% this year. I'm still going through some of those Oregon State games, but I've mentioned this before. Early in that Oregon game, they ran a counter boot, wide receiver drag, had a guy wide open, and Uwe missed him like low and behind. The guy had to go down and catch it for a 12-yard gain. The defense fooled. If he puts it on point, he turns and runs and gains about 40, and the beginning of that game is different. As it turned out, I think it was 14-7 late in the second half, and then Oregon got the ball right before halftime, went down and scored a 55-second drive. I think it made it 21-7 at halftime. But they make that play out the chute early. Maybe they score, and then that thing was close to being 14-7 going into the third quarter with Oregon State getting the ball first. And Oregon State the year before against Oregon took that game over, ground and pound offense, and I think at one point had run the ball something like 17 straight times. And although Oregon was outstanding at the beginning of the game, dazzling in a lot of ways, that game kind of had the potential to turn like it did last year. But that touchdown at the end of the first half for Oregon, making it 21-7, was a game changer. Oregon's very good. But little plays like missing that guy on that wide receiver drag could have made a difference in a game that was a very possession-oriented game. So, Uwe pretty good. Did they rather have Childs? I think they might have. Rather had Childs. Didn't ask anybody. And if I knew, might not be able to say it anyway. But those are the 3 quarterbacks. Let's go to question number 2. Molin Labe from, I think I'm saying that right. I don't know how to say that. From Gladwin. He says, can you talk about Smith's staff, coaching staff? Which position group do you think will see the biggest improvement next season? The offensive line coach, I had his pronunciation a couple weeks ago. Darn it. See, that's why I spend all this extra time and I'm late to these things. I'm getting all those little nuggets of information you need when you're live and on the air to get it right. Don't know how to pronounce his name, but hey, no disrespect, because I don't know how to pronounce my own name sometimes. I don't know his name, but I know his game, and his game is good. Offensive lines at Oregon State have been outstanding. And it'll take a while for the offensive line to gain traction. You know, they've got some parts to work with, but they're still trying to get guys out of the portal. Today, I think Wigginton, he committed to Illinois, right? Did that happen? It was supposed to be at 5 o'clock. He told me at about 4 it was going to be Illinois, but I didn't divulge it was Illinois. I assume that that's out there now. So it's going to take a while for the offensive line to come together. But the position that'll be improved right away, to answer your question, I think tight ends. Jack Velling coming in tight end of the year in the Pac-12. I think Brendan Parachek, as a sophomore, he will benefit from this coaching staff and the way they do things, the way they feature the tight end position. So I think tight end will be an improvement over this past season. On defense overall, there's going to be less brain freeze because they're going to keep it a little more simple and not have everybody's brain swimming all the time. Whether or not the talent is going to be there on the defensive line to make the whole thing sing, I don't know. But stay tuned on that. Let's go over to the comments area. And I've got more notes on the offensive line situation and Oregon State and all that, but it's in my other laptop. Again, didn't get out of rehearsal in time. What do we have here? We've got Craig Go Green says, happy signing day comp. Eric M says, go Green from Rossville, Georgia. Rob South says, what's up, fellas? Majin Drop says, go White. Dr. Terrence Gibson says, go Green from Chicago. So we got Terrence Gibson. He's going to be down low. He's our 5. He might not be very tall, but he's got sharp elbows. He's a wide body. He's going to go Barkley style down there. Man Drop, he's our shooter. I mean, look at the picture there. I mean, that guy's, he's got a shooter's mentality. Rob South, he's on the other wing. Eric M, stretch 4. And Craig Go Green, the first one in here, he's running the point from Jackson, Michigan. Tim D checking in from Toronto. Phantom Sparty, 3 and D wing off the bench. Sorry, Phantom. Yep, you're right. You didn't make the starting 5, but we do need 3 and D, and we'll take that from you for sure, Phantom Sparty. It's always good to have Mr. Bone Man here. Heart Eater says go Green. JJ McKay's here. I've got a special backdrop for him. Right there. He's from north of the bridge up at the Keweenaw. What do we have here?
Call from
Matt Dorsey.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press.
All right, we're going to bring him in. The OG, the all-time great, the one and only, the incomparable, the legendary, the man who made it all happen, the man who made it all possible. The original recruiting analyst for SpartanMag.com, Matt Dorsey. Coming to talk some recruiting for us. Long time away. He's always been close, though. He's over at that underground bunker message board dropping knowledge and wisdom. Dorsicles the wise all the time. Now he's back with us. We've done a lot of recruiting podcasts with him in the past. The old recruiting rap. Now we got him today at SpartanMag.com live. Spartan Mag live. Signing day. What a day. Matt Dorsey, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I mean, that introduction,
Yeah.
I think you're, laying on a little bit thick, but hey, I appreciate it.
Good, man. Hey, it's great to hear from you. And I know you've had some really great posts over at SpartanMag.com. And it's great to touch base with you. I'm always interested to see what you think about things and how things have shaped up. Today is signing day. Michigan State with 19 commitments, 18 signatures, a class that's, number 54 in the country or so in the On3 rankings. A few weeks ago, I thought that if Michigan State could get something in the top 50, I didn't think that was likely, but I thought if they were 49 or better, I was saying that would be a really, really good recruiting class. They just missed it, In a lot of ways, I thought they did better than I expected. What are your thoughts about this class as a whole before we start diving into some individuals?
Yeah, I'm definitely, as someone, who's just, sort of casually following things, per se, I think you have to be really excited with what happened over the last couple of weeks with Jonathan Smith coming in and the guys they were able to get and the ability to close on the amount of kids that they were, the needs that they were actually trying to meet. I just think, whether it's the portal guys, whether it's the high school guys, whether it's the flips, and we'll talk a little bit about the different specific recruits. But, I was just, today, I was very pleased as a Spartan fan with obviously the Jonathan Smith hire, but also just as this class kept coming in and guys kept getting updated and incredible coverage by SpartanMag, making, so every time I refreshed the computer, somebody else was, officially a Spartan. So I think it was a great day for Michigan State as far as setting the foundation moving forward. I think that's what Coach Smith was able to do. They really set a solid foundation. And like I said, there are a lot of similar parallels to what D'Antonio did in his first class as well, as compared to the, back in the day when John L. was bringing in the Griff Howards of the world. Nothing against Griff. Hopefully he's doing well. But, this class definitely has the ability to sort of provide a foundation and that smooth transition so there's not a huge drop-off of talent.
Matt, did you get a chance to watch Jonathan Smith's press conference from today yet, by any chance? I know you've had a busy day. Did you get a chance to see any of it?
Actually, I didn't watch his press conference because I was too busy watching the SpartanMag VCast with you and Paul and Jason. So, I had some stuff to do after work with my son. So, I just got home and I was watching the VCast, and then I was watching some highlight film. I wanted to watch the highlight film of went back and watched the quarterbacks and the new quarterback commitment, and then some other guys as well. I just wanted to, watch their film again before I got on with you. So I haven't had a chance to watch his press conference, but I'll probably go back as soon as I get off and just watch it. So, but I'm sure that, a lot of the things that, from hearing from you guys talking about and what he was having to say, just a lot of sort of echoes that D'Antonio sort of environment that Michigan State kind of got away from a little bit under Coach Mel Tucker.
Yeah, and again, before we start talking about individuals, your thoughts about Michigan State hiring Jonathan Smith and how Michigan State came out of some dark times with the Mel Tucker collapse, and in my opinion, recovered the fumble with Jonathan Smith. Is that the way you see it? What did you think about the Jonathan Smith hire and his first 3 weeks? What are your initial impressions?
Yeah, I was, to say that I was flabbergasted, would have been a little bit extreme, but the fact that when he was hired, I remember, my son's a big Spartan fan and he asked me questions all the time. And I said, well, hopefully they'll have somebody in place, and the season will end and they'll get somebody in relative. Boom, Howard did a great job of being right on top of this and hiring Smith right away. Which allowed, sort of to get rolling right away. And, I was really impressed with the sort of the whole coaching hire, and then just getting Jonathan Smith, as far as from a culture perspective. I know the whole West Coast thing was something that I was a little bit hung up on, but the more I thought about it, the Oregon State sort of, his roots and then coaching at Oregon State, there's a lot of similarities between a school like Oregon State with Oregon in the same state as Michigan State with Michigan in the same state. And I think Jonathan Smith will understand that sort of Spartan culture, and what you have to do and the way you have to play, at Michigan State when you have a school like Michigan, right down the road. It's something that, D'Antonio embraced that. And I think when he embraced that, I think that helped him, be able to do so well against the University of Michigan, is embracing that rivalry and for what it is, and that sort of, that hatred, and having to do things a little bit different. You can't do the same thing as University of Michigan at Michigan State. You can't go out and say, hey, we're going to recruit like Georgia and Alabama at Michigan State. It just doesn't work that way. And I think Jonathan Smith understands that. You can't be at Oregon State and recruit the same way Oregon does. You don't have, the Nike money, and you don't have, the national brand and changing all the uniforms every single week. You have to do things differently. You have to work a little bit harder. You got to develop relationships. You have to, spend time on evaluation and player development. And, that's how you're going to win at a school like Oregon State. And that's how you win at Michigan State as well. So I think that from that standpoint, I think it was it seems to be an excellent hire from sort of a culture standpoint, Jonathan Smith to Michigan State.
And they did put a ground and pound on Oregon last year in a way that Big Ten fans would all appreciate if you go back and watch the 2022 Oregon State game. And recruiting, as they've come down the stretch and who they've gone after, I thought it was everything just makes sense. It's a practical approach when you look at the 19 commitments that they have. That they signed, 18 of which signed today. I think 6 were initially committed to Barnett/Tucker. There were several others that moved on, but they were able to keep those. Those that didn't decommit and kept their options open and kept an open mind toward Michigan State, Jonathan Smith was able to come in and secure those. And then 8 Oregon State commitments, he was able to migrate over to Michigan State. And then there were 4 flips. Brady Pretzlaff, linebacker, flipped from Minnesota. Milivojevic, the quarterback, flipped from Ball State. Jesse, the quarterback from Utah State, flipped. And also Clay, the wide receiver from Ohio, Bowling Green, flipped to Michigan State. So the flips, one is an in-state Big Ten guy. One is a quarterback West Coast guy that they had before, that they recruited before. And then 2 others are MAC, border state guys, position of need, which only makes sense to go look around the MAC. Who can we flip? And they flipped a couple there, a quarterback and a receiver. It kind of makes sense, Matt. Doesn't this all make sense?
Yeah, and I kind of wrote some notes down here of things that sort of stood out to me as far as the recruiting class in general. And the first thing I thought about when Jonathan Smith was hired, you have the guys that are committed to Oregon State, and at the time he was hired. And, I remember when D'Antonio was hired from Cincinnati, a lot of people thought he was going to bring, a lot of guys over from Cincinnati, and he really didn't. And Cincinnati was at a lower level than Michigan State at that point. Oregon State's not. Oregon State's a Power 5 program. But, D'Antonio specifically brought over a couple guys that he knew, hey, every coach is going to tell you we love our class, but there's always a couple guys that they always say, hey, these guys we think really have a chance to be special for us. And I think those are the guys that they really targeted from the Oregon State class. I'm sure that, they didn't want to just go and raid the whole Oregon State kitchen, but what they did is said, hey, who are the guys that we think that, they were going to help us win big at Oregon State? They always say, hey, these guys we as well. Really so having, that's something to, to consider, that I think that, irregardless of what the ranking is next to them, it's the idea that, hey, those coaches really, thought those kids had the chance to be special. And like I said, that was Garrett Selleck and B.J. Cunningham back in the day. Because B.J. Cunningham and Garrett Selleck were not big-time recruits, and there was kids on the Cincinnati commitment list that were higher rated than those guys that D'Antonio didn't trip in and have commit to Michigan State. But he had Garrett Selleck and, B.J. Cunningham because he thought those guys could come in and play at the highest level. And, of course, they did play at the highest level, especially all the way up to the NFL. So I think that's sort of, something that stood out to me, that the Oregon State guys that came in, that they went after. And I really like the Oregon State offensive linemen that they went after as well, getting some guys that they had prioritized, as far as specific players. The Rakeem Johnson kid out of Idaho, I really like, there's people that are questioning about his size, but, you look at his film, and he's a big kid. He's got a frame, and the kid can flat out move.
Yes, he can.
And he gets out there and just hits people. And he's playing tackle. I think he could move in and be an incredible guard or center, getting out and pulling. And I have no question that they're going to add the size. And he's not going to come in he's listed at 235 on one of the recruiting sites, which I'm sure is wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in at 250, 255. Then you have a year and a half to pack 30 pounds on him, and then you got a guy who's 6'3", 285 pounds. Who's running like that, just, heat-seeking missile going after linebackers. That's a guy that I really like that they brought in. So he was one guy, of the flips that I really liked. And then, of course, you guys did a great job talking about Wyatt Hook today, which I think, on the SpartanMag VCast, he's a guy you have to like a lot as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to run film right now, and it's kind of chopping up on me a little bit. I was hoping that this would stream more smoothly. I'd spent a lot of time last night going over this video to get it loaded in to run today, and it's not working for me. And I'm upset about it. Go ahead.
What's interesting to me about the Wyatt Hook commitment is the fact that, this year the state of Michigan was pretty loaded at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You had 4 guys, one's going to Michigan, one's going to Louisville, one's going to Rutgers, and one's going to Indiana. So you had 4 guys that were, Division I tight ends. And in any given year, that, Michigan State should always be getting, should be doing really well with those guys. But 3 of the players, you got the kid who's going to Michigan, but 3 of the players were probably, one's a Michigan State legacy who sticks with Louisville. The other one's at Indiana, and the other one's at Rutgers. I have a feeling that if Michigan State would have tripped those guys in and made them a priority, they probably could have flipped them. But the reality is that they probably evaluated them and decided that Wyatt Hook, the guy that they had already at Oregon State, they liked better than the other guys in the state of Michigan, regardless of the fact that, the other guys might be ranked higher. So I think that speaks to, the fact that there was 3 guys, because when he first got hired, Jonathan Smith, I thought for sure that, he'll flip one of those tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
One of those tight ends will actually end up at Michigan State. The fact that he actually doesn't go after those tight ends, he actually sticks with his guy. And then you go out and watch his film, and you can say, well, now I know why he stuck with his guy, because his guy is, definitely has a lot of positives. And like you said, comparing him to his ranking out in California to what it would be in Michigan is just, kind of ridiculous. But, the tight end room just got a lot better with what Michigan State already has, coming back. And then you add in, Wyatt Hook, and then you also add in the transfer portal. Michigan State, that position should be a position of strength moving forward for years to come, which is really positive.
Yeah, I had some video here of Wyatt Hook, and it kind of went. Now I've got video of him blocking right now. He's got to come along as a blocker. I'm just going to take it off because the video's failing me, and I'm upset about it. But because I wanted to bring that to the viewers. But Wyatt Hook, 6'6", like I said today in the VCast, catch radius extraordinaire at 6'6", goes up high to get it. For a 6'6" young guy. And I was watching his junior film, I think. I think I saw his senior film. I'm looking at his junior film. So a tall guy like that's going to come into his body even more. His ability to plant his foot, run a route, make a catch like a tight end. He's ranked outside of the top 100 in California. I don't know. There must be a lot of great players there. Because like I said, I think he compares favorably, even then some, to Brendan Parachek. I like Parachek a lot. Had a solid freshman year, true freshman at Michigan State. I think he's going to be pretty good at Michigan State in the future. Parachek was a top 10 player in Michigan. And I like Parachek. Wyatt Hook, I think, is every bit as good, if not better, in some ways. That's the level of player that they snuck out of San Jose in Wyatt Hook, and the type of player that they built things with at Oregon State. I've not went back to see where Jack Velling was ranked. I should look that up right now, as a matter of fact. But Jack Velling, tight end of the year in the Pac-12, visited Washington, Seattle native, took a look at Michigan State, took a look at Washington, his family's in Seattle, and he chose Michigan State. Jack Velling, your thoughts about that, getting that transfer to come with Jonathan Smith and that staff, picking Michigan State over hometown Washington to come to Michigan State. He must have had a great visit in East Lansing. We've not had a chance to talk to him yet, but must have been a knockout visit for Michigan State to get the tight end of the year out of the Pac-12 in the portal in Jack Velling.
Yeah, that's definitely huge, because you look at, obviously, with Malik Carr and his situation. I mean, it's just, the opportunities there, the familiarities there with Coach Smith and the system that they run, and just the production. We were spoiled there at Michigan State at the tight end position for a long time. I mean, they just had some tremendous tight ends and tremendous tight end play for about, almost, a good 15 years, about, going back to, Kellen Freeman Davis, and then, who was the big kid out of Brother Rice that was a good tight end for him as well? 3-year starter.
The guy that caught the fake field goal in overtime against
Yeah,
Notre Dame.
yeah.
Why don't I know his name?
Yes.
And there's Deion Sims. Also,
And then you
Looks
had
like St.
at
Mary's.
one point in time you had Deion Sims, you had Brian Lithicum, and you had Garrett Selleck all on the roster at the same time. And then you get the situation where Josiah Price comes in, and even I know he didn't necessarily live up to the expectations, the last couple of years, but
Malik Carr or
no, Malik Carr, the quarterback out of Rochester. Well, he was the quarterback in high school out of Rochester.
yeah. I can't
and
think.
I know he's
They leave. I forget their names now too. As soon as they leave, he was a quarterback in the
he's
Detroit
stuck
area. Charlie Gant is who you're talking about. The tight end.
Charlie Gant. Yes,
Charlie Gant's the one from Brother
So we
Rice.
just had tight end has always been a position of strength for Michigan State, and they've had some really good ones over the years. And it'll be really nice to get back to that situation where all of a sudden you have tight ends that are plus blockers and plus receivers. And it just makes your team so much better. And there's no reason that Iowa should be the tight end central, so to speak. Michigan State should be able to do that as well for sure. So that's a positive. I also wanted to mention the Austin Clay kid out of Ohio, which I'm always kind of trying to analyze who they're going to go after, and based on, and I thought, there's some kids in the state of Michigan that they'll probably seriously take a look at. And I know there was the Ison kid out of Saginaw Heritage. And then there was I believe it's Tashi Braceful out of Southfield. And
Wide receiver committed to Toledo.
They're both wide receiver commitments at MAC schools who, a lot of people thought that these guys would definitely be on the on the Michigan State radar, and I'm sure they were. I'm sure that they got evaluated, and then Michigan State goes out and takes Austin Clay. So it's like that tight end position. There was guys in the state of Michigan who are quality players, whether it's from the tight end position or the wide receiver position, that I'm sure were evaluated. Then they dip down into Ohio and take Austin Clay after having a great senior year, evaluating his senior film. I mean, the kid looks pretty dynamic in the return game, which never hurts. Plus, considering, Terrell Henry's actually, headed out. So, there's an opportunity to get involved in the return game for Austin Clay. So, I really like, what I've seen from his film. And I just think that the staff really did their homework. That's what these last couple of weeks, I'm sure that these guys have been working on, burning the candle at both ends and not getting a lot of sleep. But just when you look at things from an analytical perspective, the decisions that they made on these guys just make a lot of sense. And I remember, back in the day, every signing day, I would have to go on, a couple radio shows, and I would go on usually after Josh Hemholt, who was covering Michigan back in the day. And the conversation on the radio guy would be about all the 4 stars and top 100 guys. And my conversation would always be, about how Mark D'Antonio had really addressed the needs of Michigan State. The class wasn't ranked, in the top 10, but, these guys meet the needs of what Mark D'Antonio wants to do. And I think, that's sort of what I see out of this class with Jonathan Smith. A lot of guys meeting the needs, and they've done really good evaluation in a small amount of time. So looking forward, it'll be really interesting to see, when these guys really get a chance to evaluate kids throughout the spring, have them on campus, have them at camps, things like that. I think it'll really, bode well for Michigan State, because that's how Jonathan Smith had to do it at Oregon State. You had to be better at evaluation and player development, and that's how you're going to have to do it at Michigan State as well. So the fact that these guys were able to do as well as they did in 3 weeks, and it makes a lot of sense to take these Oregon State kids because they had obviously vetted these kids and done a lot of evaluation, so they knew exactly what they were looking for.
And Austin Clay, also the wide receiver, underrated. I think he's rated the number 3 wide receiver in Ohio. And we talked about that in the VCast today. I think he's at least number 2. You can argue number 1, but a lot of ability, a lot of talent. Reminds us of Jaden Reed a little bit in terms of his size and athleticism. Remains to be seen if he's got that kind of playmaking ability. That's a lot to put on him. But he's a guy that spent a lot of time playing basketball during his during high school, and his high school coach believes that now that he has a chance to focus on football and get into his football body a little bit more, that he is going to take it up a notch. We're showing video right now of Austin Clay. It's not breaking up too much, but he actually outruns the cameraman a few times. Like he's outside of the frame and the camera can't catch up to him. Happens several times. Does he remind you of Jaden Reed at all?
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing when I first watched his film. That was the guy that, as far as, especially in the return game, being able to plant his foot, stick it, and cut. Mm-hmm. He does that several times, and his speed. And the fact that, obviously Jaden Reed was a guy who was overlooked, ended up in the MAC, tears it up in the MAC. And Austin Clay, we don't know what's going to happen, but if he would have been in the MAC, it wouldn't have been surprised if he's one of those guys that stepped right in and ends up catching 40, 50 passes in his first year as a freshman and is all freshman in the MAC, that type of, impact. That's exactly what he looked like. And, those guys, that can do that, unfortunately, I hate to say it, Reed didn't belong in the MAC.
Right.
He belonged in the Big Ten. And he's doing really well in the NFL as well. So, when you watch, his film, you can definitely see, Clay's film, you can definitely see why the coaches like him, because of his ability to separate, his ability to plant his foot. He's got good hands, just his body control, a lot of positives, as far as the different things you're looking for in a wide receiver. And then the fact that he's another Ohio kid. And, I would assume that Michigan State will be moving forward, will be more aggressive in the state of Ohio, sort of getting back to their roots. I know Jonathan Smith talked about in his press conference about that 4-hour radius. So, getting back into that state of Ohio. And I heard Paul mention earlier today about how, Ohio coaches want to send their kids to a school where they know that the kids are going to basically, they're in a good system and that they're going to have success. And I think, that's something that, Coach Smith will basically be able to sort of hang his hat on, that, from the standpoint of, it's not one of those, hey, we're just going to bring kids in and run them off right away. Coaches are going to realize that, hey, we're going to send our kids up to Michigan State and they're going to be taken care of.
All right. Great stuff, Matt. And you talked about, some of these recruits coming in. And it's interesting that you mentioned Rakeem Johnson, the offensive lineman from Idaho. I was trying to run video of him, and I'm going to try to get it to go one more time, because he runs like a defensive end. That's what you said. He's. I'm showing video right now. They threw a hook and trailer to him as a tight end. He's an offensive lineman, but athletic, a kid out of Idaho, 6'3", maybe a center in the future, but his ability to get out of his stance and pull on their counter plays and, get right here on this outside zone toss. I think that's what that was. Athletic, like you said. Rakeem Johnson, Idaho, here he's on a counter play, turning the corner, looking like a defensive end. This is a guy that could be like a MAC-level defensive end, and he's coming in as an offensive lineman. And with Oregon State's ability to develop offensive linemen and discover offensive line hunks of clay out there to work with, this one is really intriguing. Rakeem Johnson is someone that I was... Yeah,
he's a guy...
Go ahead.
You I know you used to like to, when you used to go to camp, you used to like to watch guys run the hoop.
Yeah.
And,
defensive ends, not offensive tackles. And this guy can run hoop as an offensive lineman.
Yeah, and, I sort of just started to think about that, might sort of be sort of a similar way, is remember when Joe Tate came to Michigan State? Yeah. And I believe Joe Tate started out at defensive line and then switched to offensive line.
Yeah.
And, and Joe Tate was, a guy who wasn't the biggest guy, as far as, but he was able to add enough mass that he was, Joe Tate was a good football player at Michigan State.
Yes.
And, so that might be sort of a comparison. I know a lot of people like to say, hey, who does this kid remind you of? And Joe Tate was a guy who, played defensive line and was perfectly functional defensive line, but then they're like, hey, let's move him to the offensive line. And he had a nice career on the offensive line. So, here's a guy who definitely, like you said, he can run and, get out there and he looks like a defensive end. But I actually, like I said, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if when he arrives on campus, he's in the 250, 255 range. And, a lot of these kids, if they're playing other sports, they haven't been at the training table on a regular basis and lifting weights the way they lift weights at Michigan State, and they'll definitely put the size on. I'm not worried about that.
Right. And Rakeem Johnson, built like a D lineman. Joe Tate is an interesting one. Joe Tate was up around 6'4" or 6'5", I think. But it's a good comparison that, former defensive lineman and the things he does. At Oregon State, they had a guy named Tanner Miller who's like a 6'1", former walk-on, ended up being, I think, honorable mention or third team All Pac-12 this year. And this guy, Jake Levengood, was like second team All Pac-12 at center. And if Rakeem Johnson can become a center in the future, his athleticism, the advantages you can get by being able to snap and pull and get out of the perimeter, this guy, if he can handle everything else that goes with being a center, he's a really interesting one. And a guy out of Idaho that they liked early on, and they're bringing him into Michigan State, and they need offensive lineman at Michigan State, that's for sure. Any other ones? Did you get a chance to look at the Lunieski twins? What do you think about them? I kind of compare them to the football's version of the Hanson brothers. But what do you think about the Lunieski twins?
Yeah, I mean, I like both of them, obviously, and those are, it's interesting. I really like the fact that you have an offensive line class that's made up of, I believe they have 5 offensive line commits. So it's one of those things where you build your program through the line, and obviously they're going to still have to address some issues on the defensive line, and that'll be something moving forward. And we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. Maybe there's some other players still out there that are still available. Obviously, the portal as well. But those two guys, stuck with throughout things. It sounds to me like they also were positive, representatives, for Michigan State and the university. They didn't commit to the staff; they committed to the school. And sounds to me like they loved Michigan State, and I think that was positive. And obviously they're, especially the one twin has a lot more size, which is, a little bit more indicative of the previous staff was looking for guys that, sort of were, maybe a little bit more physically ready right away. But then on the other hand, sometimes those guys, as they get bigger and stronger, they lose some of that speed. So, but yeah, it's funny you say that the Hanson twins, it's kind of like, I remember watching, probably the greatest highlight film I've ever seen of anybody is Kenny Willekes' basketball film. Yeah. If you remember that, where it's just a bull in a china shop. And, and Michigan State needs some guys that are going to be just maulers. That's what you want. And I think I threw up on the, the Michigan State board a couple weeks ago or, a couple days ago about, I remember a Michigan State coach telling me one time, hey, you get me kids that want to be a Spartan and that are tough as nails. And he goes, and hey, I'll beat Michigan all day long. That was a direct quote from a former Michigan State coach. And that's what he was saying. Kids that want to be Spartans and that are willing to work and are tough. And I think these two kids sort of fall, the twins sort of fall into that category. They obviously wanted to be Michigan State Spartans and, represented the program and stuck with it through everything. And obviously now they're Spartans, and the proof will be in the pudding. But they definitely sort of bring that, sort of edge to the program too.
I like these guys. They got commitment from the twins in the summer, and I thought Mercer Lunieski looked pretty good. And I thought Charlton was the lesser of the two. And then I've got a chance in recent days to watch their senior film, and Charlton Lunieski's come a long way, and they're both good. They're both a handful. And Jonathan Smith says he likes their personality. I mean, these guys are hell on wheels. Okay. And Mercer Lunieski at 6'3", 305, wingspan of 6'8", he makes use of it. If you see him on film, he extends those arms. He's got the strength to do it. Makes use of that wingspan. Lateral movement. When they run their counters, really good at getting up and going. And, they brought him in motion, and they ran a quarterback sneak with Mercer Lunieski one time. And he's athletic on their trap plays as a straight line puller. And on defense, you see lateral movement as a defensive player, reading, reacting, chasing it down. Lateral movement, knees bent, basically mirroring what you would do in pass protection. And but you see him do it on defense when he has to. Like a lot of times they leave him unblocked and they're trying to option him, or he's making a read. His lateral movement and being able to step and go. Mercer Laniewski looks really good, and then Charlton, who was the lesser ranked of the two, much improved. Good lateral quickness, good pass set, mean, physical, and he's quick when pulling and folding on the play side. And I think he's only played 3 years of football. And that makes sense now if last year was his second year, how much he's improved. He can turn his hips and log block, good power. When he plays D-line, good power when he's two-gapping to disengage. And, I got a lot of respect for the people that have to do rankings because I've tried to do it in the past and it's really difficult. And a lot of times we in this industry might not go back and watch enough senior film. And if you go back and watch Laniewski's senior film, both of these guys, they are. I mean, if there's 30 or 40 players in Ohio better than those guys, I'm not sure. I think Michigan State did well to get in on those guys early, keep them involved, and go ahead and sign them. I'm really impressed with the progress they made, and they're excitable Michigan State guys, and it's going to be fun watching those guys in Spartan uniforms.
Well, the last two, the last set of twins that signed with Michigan State, would have been the Slade brothers out of Ohio, and. So that worked out pretty well. So, I mean, obviously one had an exceptional career at Michigan State. The other one,
two-star recruits.
Yeah, but they were way under the radar, and not getting the respect from but Michigan State had them at camp, evaluated them. That's an example of good evaluation at camp, working with the kids. And those guys wanted to be Spartans too. So, and like I said, that goes back to that, hey, give me kids that want to be Spartans. The Slade brothers, I remember, really wanted to be Michigan State Spartans. And, and so it worked out. So, that's great that, to go back and watch senior film. And I remember it was always fun. Remember, you and I used to do we used to re-rank the top 25 kids in Michigan every year. And, that's the famous Jim Comparoni ranking, Will Campbell.
Where did we rank it? He was number one in Michigan forever, and he was a national top 40 guy, right? And Spartan,
you ranked him like out of the top 10.
We ranked him like we ranked him like 12 or 13 in Michigan.
Yeah, and I wasn't. You were. Like I said, I wasn't super high on him, but you were very. I mean, you basically did your homework on him, and you're like, hey, this guy, he's a 3-star guard. He's not a 5-star defensive tackle. And of course, the Pope was definitely right on that one. So you hit the nail on the head. So
I took a lot of abuse for that from Michigan fans.
But that was always fun going back and watching guys' senior film, and we would be like, we would talk to each other, and you'd be like, hey, did you watch his film? Because his ranking, there's no way that this kid should be, and I think that's a lot of these guys don't go back and watch the senior film of kids. They've seen the junior film, they see who's offered them, they go out and offer them. They don't realize that, I remember back in the day, that used to be, the recruiting process has sped up so much. It used to be how many times you would hear kids saying, yeah, the coach wants me to send my first 3 games of my senior year. That was the industry standard, was the coaches wanted to see your senior film. And nowadays, it's so early that there's opportunities to get really, really good football players late in the process, because so many schools fill up so early that, they don't have room for kids like an Austin Clay, because they already have 2 or 3 wide receiver commits, and, they can't take, and here's a kid who's now better than, the guy that they took back in, 9 months ago. So there's definitely opportunities there for a coaching staff that does their homework and really, puts an emphasis on evaluation, which Jonathan Smith obviously did at Oregon State, and I'm sure he'll do the same at Michigan State.
Yeah. Ranking the class, we used to do the SpartanMag top 25 on the 25th, and that was fun, but man, it took so much time because I go over the film and over and over, because there were some of our rankings were kind of wacky. They were outside the norm, and if it's going to be outside the norm, you better be able to support it. And it just got to the point where I was wrapping presents on Christmas Eve watching film of Cole Chewins. And I'm like, where should I put him? Where should I put him? And it's hard to do. But a few times, almost every year we would pick out a Michigan guy that just not as good as his ranking, and got a lot of hate for it. still get a lot of hate from Michigan fans. You know why they hate us? It's because we're right a lot on that stuff. I mean, we can help them out. We know what a bad football player looks like, so we can help them with that sometimes. As far as, I'm not doing an in-state ranking this year, but if I did, I don't know the entire state, but for instance, the linebacker at Belleville, Jeremiah Beasley, 6 feet 210, very good high school player, physical, good inside linebacker, good bowling ball type ball carrier, running back. Not sure, he's kind of heavy-legged. Not sure how he's going to translate to the Big Ten level as a linebacker in terms of lateral movement, quickness, and at 6 feet, not a guy that can pull a Lawrence Thomas and go down and play defensive line. Jeremiah Beasley's 4-star, number 7 in the state of Michigan. But I would not trade Brady Pretzlaff for him. And On3 has Brady Pretzlaff as a national top 280 and a 4-star, but nobody else in the industry does. So his overall industry ranking is a 3-star, number 14 in the state. Previously he was like 20 or something like that. But also, that's a couple of inside linebackers. Jaden Walker's an outside linebacker. Listed at 6'3", maybe he's 6'2", I don't know, but he runs really well from Portage Northern. USC has come after him, number 23 in the state. Previously a Bowling Green commitment. You never know who's going to pan out and who's going to be good. Beasley's got some physical ability, like I said, at Michigan, 4-star, number 6 in the state. I would not trade Jaden Walker for Beasley. Different players, apples to oranges. Walker's more of a slot linebacker. Beasley's between the tackles, but Walker's got some speed and ability to avoid blocks or defeat blocks. That I think is pretty good. So that's a number 23 who's committed to Michigan State but not signed, that I think is better, that I would not trade for number 7 in the state, Jeremiah Beasley. Nothing against Beasley. That's just my read right now. I might be wrong. I'm due to be wrong on some of these, Matt, but I like the Walker kid.
Well,
I like Pretzlaff.
hopefully, Jaden Walker's a guy that, you definitely, can see in a senior film that, he shows things. It's obviously why Michigan State, was after him, and Harlan Barnett obviously did a nice job there with, making the offer, getting him to be a Spartan, and hopefully Michigan State can hang on to him. And hopefully what they can do is, as you guys mentioned before, get him back on campus to sit down with Coach Rossi, who's not only the defensive coordinator, but a linebacker guy, so he can really sit there and go over how he would fit in the Michigan State scheme and sort of develop some familiarity with his position coach as well. So, the fact that he didn't sign today is a positive, from that standpoint. And hopefully, like I said, you can just make that trip up to Michigan State and sit down, hang out, with some of the other players as well, go to a basketball game, sit down with the coaches, go over film about how they'd use him and things like that. And, hopefully he'll end up being in green before all is said and done. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that you would, when you look at these rankings, he's somebody who is definitely underranked. Considering, what did you say, he's 21? I believe.
20, I think he's 24 in the state of Michigan right now. Jaden Walker, Portage. You go watch him. I mean, he's athletic and he's got some physicality. He can chase things down. He's an interesting one. Let's see if I've got, good wheels downhill to change direction on the move when downhill. It's one thing to be downhill, but it's not just straight downhill out of control. It's downhill with some agility with it and some subtle head and shoulder movement to defeat blocks. One time taking on an H block against somebody, I mentioned this in the VCast, same foot, same shoulder, and blows a guy up, change of direction in space while converging. Very good technique in defeating blocks. Very good shock and control, as Mark D'Antonio used to call it. And he can accelerate while turning the corner. Well coached with that same foot, same shoulder, and leveraging the ball as part of an 11-man unit on defense. Coiled in his change of direction when he plays the zone read option right at him, coiled and ready to go. I compared him, like Antoine Simmons was number 6 player in the state of Michigan. Antoine Simmons had a pretty good career at Michigan State, but I think Walker is taller and Simmons was a very good sports car, change of direction, linebacker type of guy. I think Walker's similar but taller, and Simmons was number 6 in the state. This guy's number 24. I like the Walker guy a lot. Michigan State's going to try to keep a hold of him as a commitment with USC coming in. Now, like we said in the VCast, he's extending it toward February. I wouldn't be surprised if other schools don't come in on him as well. There's not a lot of
and you know what? That's not a bad thing from Michigan State's perspective, to tell you the truth. because the more schools you visit, I mean, you go out to USC and it's, you're out there in Southern California and everything's great and everything. But then you take another trip and all of a sudden it's like, you basically see every place is going to roll out the red carpet and show you all the bells and whistles. And then, and once you've seen all the bells and whistles, then it comes back to, factors like, hey, the relationship that I can build, possibly being close to home, playing in front of family, nothing against USC, but, is Lincoln Riley is he long for USC? He's either got to win at USC, or get fired, or he wins and he goes to the NFL. I mean, there's already been people throwing around the San Diego Chargers job. I guess he made a comment about that being his dream job or something like that. Not San Diego's, LA Chargers, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a situation where, you had the Heisman Trophy winner coming back this year and they definitely underachieved and, they're coming into the Big Ten. Life's not going to get any easier for USC. So, he's a guy it'll be interesting to see. That's one of the nice things from a Michigan State perspective is, if you're a kid, coming to Michigan State now, that there's some stability with the coaching staff, because, Jonathan Smith, none of us are expecting Michigan State to be in the playoffs next year. It's one of those things where, you have to build the program. And that's, these guys coming in are going to basically, give Michigan State the foundation to do that. So, you have to like that standpoint of, that if you're a kid, that the coaches that you're going to be there, especially the head coach is probably going to be there for a long time. It's not like, a one and done situation where all of a sudden the guy rolls out for the NFL or rolls out because he gets fired. So yeah, that's just something as far as just, looking at USC and what's going on there. But hey, I think it's great. Yeah, I think it'd be great if he took some other visits because I think that would give Michigan State more perspective. So
That's an optimistic way to look at it. If I'm Michigan State, I'm like, man, I don't want that guy visiting anywhere else. I want that guy signed. But I hear you. Hey,
well, if he can't sign till February now, then
can't sign.
Like I said,
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other recruits for this class or transfers that you want to talk about real quickly before we let you go? Anyone else catch your eye that you had notes on?
Just the I do like they're bringing in the two running backs out of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So and these guys just look like football players, and Frazier. I think you guys talked about that earlier today about his situation as far as a running back at his school. But he definitely checks those boxes as somebody who just is a high school football player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back of guys that people love to talk, especially with his size. People love to throw the Denikos Allen out there. Denikos was a running back in high school. Eric Gordon was a running back. By the way, Eric Gordon wasn't very big either.
No.
Eric Gordon
Traverse
was
City.
6 foot tall. Eric Gordon was 6 foot tall with his cleats on probably. But he was a good running back in high school. Chris Fry was a good running back in high school. A lot of these guys that are linebackers, or vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see how he projects. But he definitely is a guy who, he's been at his high school and he's done what is had to do to help his team win.
Mm.
And those are the type of guys that you want on your team. I mean, you can't have a team full of superstars. You need guys, we used to always call them program guys. You need guys that basically are going to stay with your program and, bleed green and, be quality backups, be starters, that when the need be willing to change positions if they have to, guys that, run down on special teams, help you win games. I mean, you look at the Rose Bowl and, Michigan State had multiple guys that on that team that were, just quartering, was whether it was Pendleton or whether it was
Connor
the
Cruz,
linebacking core,
Makaja Reynolds. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys that just, did whatever needed to be done. And Makaja Reynolds playing both offensive line and defensive line. Connor Cruz was a walk-on who basically buys his time and made his contribution. So
was Pendleton. Pendleton was a walk-on too. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I did want to say that, that you mentioned earlier the idea about the Twins playing defensive line. I love it when offensive linemen also play D-line. There's a lot of places that they don't. So I just think it's great when you see offensive linemen who also play defensive line, because, it is a different beast playing on the defensive line. And I think it just, it's that sort of nastiness that you're looking for sometimes. And sometimes you're able to see how quick they are off the ball a little bit, because they don't know the snap count, as compared to the offensive line who does know the snap count. So just little things like that, I think you're able to come up when you get to see an offensive lineman play defense. I think that definitely helps in the evaluation. So, and that was probably something I assume that staff probably looked at with those two guys and was able to see their film as far as not only the offensive line but the defensive line. So, but a lot of offensive linemen don't play defensive line anymore.
And,
so,
and that's something that I wrote about. That's something I had in my notes about Mercer Lunieski, and off his junior film, a thick-legged guy that moved real well, an offensive line recruit that played well on defense. Watching him on defense, and that's what I wrote. Reminded me of another guy that played some defense coming out of Ohio, Dan France. Just the thick-legged guy that could play some D-line also. I like these Lunieski guys. When they first committed, I was like, okay, whatever. But they've come along, and they're fun.
Dan France is the answer to a great trivia question. Dan France, Michigan State obviously recruited him as a defensive lineman, and Narduzzi loved Dan France on the defensive line. And they end up taking Dan France, as a defensive lineman. That was Narduzzi's call. Of course, France ends up being an offensive tackle, and had a really nice career at offensive tackle. And his scholarship for the defensive line probably took the scholarship away from another player who wanted to go to Michigan State. A mutual friend of ours knows very well, the kid out of Texas. Remember the kid we're talking to? He ended up going to Texas Tech, and he's been in the NFL for like 12 years now.
And he's still getting sacks. He played for the Lions for a little bit.
Yeah. And basically,
go ahead.
It came down to they were looking for one more defensive lineman, and 2020 hindsight, France ends up becoming an offensive line, but France was the scholarship, the guy that took that spot that prevented him from becoming a Michigan State Spartan, because he wanted to be a Spartan, and he's had a really nice career at Texas Tech, and then obviously in the NFL. And like I said, France had a great career at Michigan State as well as an offensive tackle. Michigan State would have been in big trouble without him. For a couple of years there, he really, I think, was a 3-year starter at offensive tackle.
Yeah.
So
Kerry Hyder,
definitely
Kerry Hyder.
Kerry Hyder, yes.
Very good NFL career. So, our Texas Top 100, Nils Deco, the guy that calls in this show, we have as a guest quite often. He was involved in AAU basketball in Texas, and Kerry Hyder was involved. It was part of the AAU program. Very good football player. And Nils was visiting East Lansing one time, and Kerry rode up with him, went to camp, and wanted to be a Spartan, but didn't get the scholarship offer. But he's still in the NFL.
Well, unfortunately, the kid was coming off a broken leg, I remember, or broken ankle or something. He couldn't run quite as good as. But it was one of those things that I remember, Ted Gill really liked him in the defensive line. Narduzzi liked Dan France on the defensive line, and they ended up taking France. Obviously, Narduzzi was the DC, so he made the call there. And, France ended up switching after his freshman year to also, but Kerry Hyder's the guy. So, just another interesting story about guys. Sometimes, it's just a numbers game, and sometimes that's the way the dominoes fall. So,
and Nils Deco was also the guy that got the ball rolling, that ended up with Nick Foles going to Michigan State too. Now, other people got some credit for it, but he was the one that connected the train tracks and put it in motion. He did. He's a matchmaker, as they say in the boxing business, and that wouldn't have happened without Nils Deco, I promise you. Even Mark D'Antonio doesn't realize that. They only had Nick Foles for 1 year, but that's the truth. Anyway, Matt Dorsey, and he could say, well, how would Mark D'Antonio not know that? Well, he didn't know. D'Antonio at the press conference gave credit to, I think, Gary Shar, who's one of our subscribers here at SpartanMag.com. But it was Nils behind the scenes that gave that threw the alley-oop, and it was jammed by other people. But anyway, takes a village, Matt, I guess. I don't know.
That's right. And I think
I don't have anything to do with it. I'm just behind the plate calling balls and strikes, just watching it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the Jonathan Smith staff will basically use all the resources that are available to them. As far as getting these kids, and there's a whole network out there as far as Spartans that are, coaching, and Spartans that have kids and legacies and all that type of stuff. And Michigan State has a great, tradition of legacy recruits. And, hey, I would have loved to seen Ira McCoy's kid up at Michigan State this year, and that was in a situation where I don't think that the staff really, jumped on it as soon as they should have, and it might not have worked out with the whole coaching change and all that type of stuff. But, he was a big time running back out of the Chicago area that, and Ivory McCoy was, a terrific Spartan back in the day. So, but I think, moving forward with Jonathan Smith, I think they will, basically there won't be any stones left unturned, I don't think, or there'll be a lot fewer left unturned with Smith and his staff, at the helm at Michigan State.
Where did the McCoy kid end up going? Do you know?
Well, his last name's not McCoy, I don't think.
All right.
I know he ended up having a ton of offers, and I think he went, I have to look it up here real quick. Let me see if I can.
And Ivory McCoy was kind of an under-the-radar tight end out of Chicago, but had all kinds of beautiful athletic ability, became a pretty good tight end. And D'Antonio, was it D'Antonio that put him at defensive end for a season? Or did he put Kellen Freeman Davis at defensive end for a season? Did Ivory McCoy? Kellen Freeman Davis for a year. I'm pretty sure that was Kellen.
Ivory McCoy, because he became like sort of designated pass rusher guy.
I think they both did. Both Kellen Freeman Davis and Ivory McCoy spent some time at defensive end. Ivory McCoy had all kinds of ability and never quite, gained traction as the end-all be-all talent that maybe he could have been, but he tried. But sometimes it just doesn't find itself. To be a tight end, you can look the part and run the part and block, but of course you have to catch the ball, which not everybody can do. And he was okay at that, but a guy that could do the splits and just a beautiful athlete. Not surprised that his offspring turned out to be a recruitable defensive end. Speaking of which,
that's Darian Dupree is the kid's
yes.
name, and he went to Chicago, Mount Carmel, which is a powerhouse school that Michigan State's recruited Mount Carmel before back in the day, and I want to say was Arthur Ray out of Mount Carmel? He could have been. I'm not sure.
Sounds right.
But ended up committing to Wisconsin. So over offers from Notre Dame, Michigan, Missouri, Illinois, and a host of others. But those were his, he's a Badger, so Michigan State will be seeing him, I assume, at some point in time. So
Wisconsin got a 4-star running back this year. Was that him?
Yes.
Wow. All right. Speaking of which, I think Joe Patrick is on the Portage Central. I don't know if he's on the Portage Central coaching staff or not, but his son Gregory Patrick, saw him at camp this year, looking really good. And Gregory Patrick is like a little bit of Joe Patrick, but a lot of his uncle Chris Patrick, who ended up going to Nebraska and played in the NFL. Now I think it's Chris Patrick, and now Chris Patrick's.
It was Chris.
I saw Chris this summer also, and Chris still looks really good, and he's a farmer among other things. So I think Joe is a little bit too, and Gregory looks really good for a young offensive lineman. Class of 2026. That's a legacy that Michigan State, I assume, is going to be busy with here in the weeks and months ahead. Matt, I really appreciate. Go ahead.
There's a couple good legacies that are out there that I'm sure Spartan fans are aware of. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, moving forward, because that was one thing that under D'Antonio, Michigan State did a great job with legacy recruits. Obviously from going from the Bullas to the, there was just a lot of them, just down the line, every single kid. And then obviously getting the Allen brothers and creating a legacy there with the Allen brothers and getting all three of those guys. So, that's something, but that's testament to, building a culture, where if you can build that culture, you can get those legacy recruits and you can get brothers to come up and younger brothers and siblings and things like that. So, hopefully those will be the things that we'll be seeing more and more of in the future.
All right, Matt. Hey, man, great stuff. Really appreciate having you back on the show and your insight.
Yeah, it was great to be here, Jim. I love talking recruiting, and it's like I said, I'm as a Spartan more of a fan now. I try to be a little bit more of a fan, not as much. I don't have to be a sort of impartial as far as an analyst, but as a Michigan State fan, I think it was a really good day for the Spartan program moving forward, and I think you have to be excited about the direction of the program. And, it's not going to be, hey, it's not going to always, be, terrific all the time. It's going to take a little while, but I think that, today was a real positive step in the right direction for the program overall and with Coach Smith. And like I said, we still have, I think there's going to be more kids in the portal coming, and I think there's also going to be, maybe another couple kids with signing day in February. So there's still more to get excited about with Michigan State football and football recruiting.
Mm-hmm. In 3 weeks, being able to put together this class, and I know a lot of them were already 1 foot in, but to go ahead and finish on all of those in 3 weeks makes you wonder what they could do in 365 days. And then if they start winning a little bit more and more in the years ahead, they keep that pragmatic, resourceful approach, and could be some good days ahead for Michigan State football. Matt, appreciate your work, appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. We'll talk to you soon. Sound good?
Okay. Take care, Gene.
There he goes, Matt Dorsey, the great one, the original, the all-powerful, the mighty and powerful Matt Dorsey. Great to have him with us. We can finally get to some questions here. Appreciate everybody posting questions, and we will get to those right now. Give us a like here on the channel and subscribe to the channel. And also, we encourage you to go over to SpartanMag.com, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber. All right. Question 3. All right, Carl from Canton, Michigan says, I'd love to hear any stories related to how this class came together, what the coach's game plan was, and how close they came to pulling it off perfectly. It's hard to imagine doing much better than they did, all things considered, but maybe they were even more ambitious. All right, good question. I would point out what I said earlier, the fact that they put this class together, Jonathan Smith did, while hiring a defensive coordinator in the middle of it. 20 visits last weekend. They only had 2 visit weekends to put together a class. Really good job hiring a defensive coordinator. Very important. That was an interesting sidelight to all of this. I don't have any inside stories about the coaching staff. We've not really gotten to know them yet. So, in years past on signing day, we'd get a chance to talk to Narduzzi and some of those guys, Tressel, at signing day about some of the position groups and so forth. Not able to do that at this point. Everything's still kind of new, and they don't do that anymore. Maybe they will in the future. So don't have a lot of those tales of the recruiting trail like we've had in past years. But I'm impressed that Michigan State got in on Tyler Cherry the way they did at the 11th hour. He didn't know anything about Michigan State, and he gave Michigan State a real close look and real serious consideration. Didn't end up getting him, but I'm also impressed that they had Rylan Jesse on the back burner, and he was willing to stay on the back burner as a Utah State commitment. So those things, not really behind-the-scenes stories, but things that I was impressed with. Let's go here to the comments section. As a matter of fact, I'll throw this out there. We'll open the phone lines. I don't know if anyone wants to call. It's getting kind of late on a weeknight. But if anyone wants to, we'll throw it out there. What just happened here? Look out. Look out. What is going on? Is a blimp carrying that around the stadium? I don't know what just happened. Hide the children. All right, here we go. We got, let's go over here to the comments area. Kevin from Glendale, Arizona, Michigan State, class of 2007. Clark Merrier saying, howdy, folks, checking in from the south of the border, Sylvania, Ohio. Good to have John Coonan here checking in from Grand Rapids. J.J. McKay from Keweenaw, top of Michigan. We had the bridge for him earlier. We'll put the bridge back on there. How's that? Feeling festive. I lost a couple of my backdrops, you may have noticed. I went green on me a little bit. And you're right, do need to upgrade the laptop. Actually, I've got another one. I might, for that very reason, maybe we will get that going and see if we can get some of the video working in the future, because we've had that happen before. And you're right, maybe not enough horsepower in the laptop, but I've got a new one. Maybe that'll get the job done. Maybe we'll try that next week. Tom Helderman, my good friend, MSU 66, is Tom and Tanya here. Good to hear Tanya's doing well. We're Spartan fans all over the world. Love to hear from Tom and Tanya. You guys be good. And are we to forget about Tyler Cherry now that we have 3 quarterbacks in the fold, Jim? Yeah, I can forget about him for now. Tyler Cherry, a lot of talent. Michigan State made a run at him, didn't make it happen. Oh, he may not have known that he committed to Indiana last night. Desert Spartan from the great Sonoran Desert checking in. A bit of rain and some clouds today in Phoenix. Rain and clouds in Phoenix. They must have been in a panic. This is number 6 is saying 8-4 next year. Don't think so. It's going to take some time. 09 says, thanks for the VCast. That was excellent. Had a lot of fun doing it over at Spartan Stadium. Jason Killip, Paul Konerdijk, and myself. Check it out here on the channel. Mark Webster says, great first class for Jonathan Smith. Feels like they got 4 5-stars in that group. Very Coach D-like. Always great to have George Page with us, the former guitar player and keyboard player for Surrender Dorothy, one of the top 25 East Lansing bands in music history. George Page, great to have him. He says, have a safe and happy holiday. Cheers. Cheers to you as well, George. Have a cup of cheer on me. J.J. McKay from the Keyville now says they're building the program the right way. Tim D. out of Toronto says, I agree, got some stability back in the program. Robert Rosen says, Comp, give us insight on some of the lesser knowns in this class. Raheem Johnson seems like a freak athlete. What's his story? You know, good question. And Matt and I were just talking about him, and he's a guy that I really didn't start pouring into his film until last night at about 3 a.m. when I was trying to get this podcast together, this SpartanMag Live. I wanted to run his film here. And he was an interesting discovery. Again, 6'3". I'm interested to see what's going to become of him because it's not like he's a can't miss because he's 6'3". And his build, he kind of has, kind of high hips and defensive end type of lower body. And I'm just intrigued to see what becomes of him because I'm not sure because he's uncommon. 6'3", 255, 3-star, number 99 offensive lineman in the country, number 2 in Idaho. Boise Bishop Kelly High School. Had offers from Oregon State, Washington State, Air Force, Boise State. And then lately, Cal and BYU have come after him, and I can understand why. Official visits to Michigan State, Oregon State, Washington State. Committed to Oregon State in July. Like I said earlier, 6'3", not great size to be outside the center position, but I could see him becoming an outstanding center. His athleticism, straight line speed, turn the corner. I can foresee snap and pull on some pin and pulls out of him. I've not heard that they plan on him being a center, but that's what would make sense to me. I mean, he looks like a defensive end with his gait and his athleticism. Like I said earlier, they ran a hook and lateral to him for a touchdown as an offensive tackle. Let me see if I can run that. But I think the film works for a second or two. Here's that hook and lateral as an offensive tackle. See his legs there? I mean, it doesn't look like an offensive lineman. Now he's going to pull from the left tackle position. Turn the corner. And he blasts a guy at number 55. Here he's at left tackle again. Guy crossing the face and securing the edge. Pancake. Raheem Johnson out of Idaho. Left tackle, counter, trap. Turns the corner. Didn't end up trapping that guy. Turns the corner and gets downfield. All right, look at that again. Let's see. When he turns the corner on this thing, watch him turn the corner right here. Turn the corner. I'm envisioning a center getting out there and doing that. Now he's playing defense, coming in, strip, but defeats a block. And apparently on the other side of the wash there's a fumble that he created. Looks like the video is working here for a minute. We'll go with it. Left tackle here again as well. It's like a counter sweep. Now we're starting to lose it again, but athleticism down the field. Anyway, Raheem Johnson, liking that guy in terms of his, how about a Christmas truck? How's that look for everybody? We're going to go with that. I'm feeling seasonal. But Raheem Johnson is someone that you just mentioned. I forget who just mentioned it, and I'm glad you did mention it because he's someone, offensive linemen sometimes are overlooked in classes, but he is uncommon. Uncommon. I'm not saying he's like a can't miss great total package. I'm just not sure I remember a 6'3" athletic offensive lineman who looked like that in the past. Matt mentioned Joe Tate. That's an interesting comparison. And I came on and I said Michigan State survived, and J.J. McKay says I'd say we thrived. So very positive outlook from him. Got a frozen pond behind us. That's perfect for skating. Put some goals out there, maybe some shin pads, and let's play some pickup hockey. Can't do it right now. Nothing's frozen yet. Hopefully it'll freeze. Last winter, the ponds around here in East Lansing only froze for about 6 or 7 days. Now, when I mean frozen, I mean like enough to get out on, but that looks beautiful to me. Don't know about you guys. That's what I'm talking about. I'm a freak that way, but I prefer that to the beach. I like the beach. I like both. But when you're out playing hockey on a frozen pond and the trees are glistening, there's blue sky, but it's 25 degrees and snow, it's like a sports gift from nature. I know beaches are great too, but beaches are great for a lot of things and a lot of games, but I'm out of that game. Been out of that game for 23 years, but the rest of the beach game is certainly nice. Mark Ghostigan says, good recruits for Smith. Mr. Bowman says, very happy with this class. J.J. McKay, very promising recruits. Henry says, how do you feel about our new DC, Joe Rossi? Rossi. I mentioned this on the Underground Bunker before. Rossi coming in from Minnesota. I mentioned this on the VCast. I think today we mentioned it. That 2022, when I wrote the pre-snap read when Michigan State was getting ready to play Minnesota, I didn't really know much about Rossi or Minnesota's whole package, and was very impressed at how well Minnesota had their crap together in 2022. Michigan State was coming off that blowout loss at Washington, and the pre-snap read, you might remember I was very pessimistic. You probably don't remember it specifically. I'm often pessimistic on that. But Michigan State had been top 10 in the country the year before, and they were still top 25. And I was like, Minnesota has their crap together. This is going to be a difficult one. And much of what they had together was on defense. They were just correct. They were sound. They were square. They leveraged the ball to their help. They made tackles. They defeated tackles. Coverages, they were varied, but nothing too outlandish, and they reminded me of Iowa light, like a slightly watered down Iowa, which on defense, which is a high compliment. And I was like, man, they're well coached on defense. And when Michigan State started looking for defensive coordinators, I didn't mention him on my initial list. I should have. If I'd have sat and really thought about it for a day, I might have landed on him. And then when I heard that he was in the running, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. Now, I know Minnesota defensively did not have a great year this year, and I've gone through a lot of his press conferences from this season, and they had a lot of inexperience, especially the linebacker position, which is so important. And I mentioned in the VCast earlier today, I think his name was Mariano, number 55, which is inside linebacker for them. Reminded me of Max Bulla a little bit. Slightly less talented, but cerebral and physical and just correct. They lost him to graduation. Now he's a GA for Minnesota, I think. A lot of those guys, they had some big safeties that were just correct. This year, got away from them a few times, but I think I can see why Jonathan Smith went after him based on what Minnesota's defense was the previous years. So good, solid, and they're not going to have as much volume in. Sometimes on defense when you have so much volume in terms of you're trying to do so many things and win so many things on the whiteboard and in the game plan, you have so much volume that you blow your speakers. And I think Michigan State's defense the last few years has blown their speakers. This guy's a little bit more dial it down, in that Narduzzi D'Antonio mold. And I think it's gonna work well. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be great, and Michigan State's defense is going to be great every single week, because you can't play defense in this sport without, having some tough weekends here and there. I mean, Alabama gave up 28 or more a few times this year, right? Or 24 or more 3 or 4 times. And that's Alabama. One of the best defensive coaches in college football history, overseeing that outfit. So you're going to have games when, you're not going to keep everybody under 10 points. That's just not practical, but they're going to be solid. All right, I'm going to go back over here to the, how about this one? We'll go to that one. Actually, I don't know. Hold on a second. I'm kind of running out of backdrops. Does that one still work? All right. I got to find my questions. Here we go. Question, this is a good one. Oh, wait a minute. Question 4, Spartan Fan 81 from Westland. He's not from Westland. I just assigned him a city. At SpartanMag.com, if you don't say where you're from, I'm going to just assign you a town, and you might not like it. Nothing against Westland, good hockey town, home of Mark Madano. But good question. He says, Comp, can we get your class superlatives? Here were the categories that I used. Best get, most needed, highest ceiling, super sleeper, biggest miss, worst hair. Worst hair, that's not fair. All right, I like that. That's pretty good. Do you want to be an editor for Spartan Mag? Because that's a good story idea, excuse me. I'm going to make a note of that. All right, best get. I'm going to say the portal guys. Aiden Childs at quarterback, Jack Velling at tight end, TJ Sheffield at wide receiver, Quindarius Dunnigan defensive end. Needed those guys. There's a reason they got them. They're the best get. But in terms of high school guys, I got to go with Nick Marsh, wide receiver, River Rouge, 6'3", talent. Solid. Let me see if I can find. Here's Nick Marsh at camp a couple of summers ago. And that's Courtney Hawkins there in the foreground watching him. That's not working. More RAM. Need more RAM, right? Here we go. Anyway, that's Courtney Hawkins right there in the green. And Nick Marsh, this was at the Sound Mind Sound Body Camp, I think up at Big Rapids. That's breaking up on me again. Have to abort mission. He got his foot down. Anyway, Nick Marsh would be my choice for the best get because he's got size, speed, good kid. Jonathan Smith was talking today about him as a young man, and he is impressive as a young man. Type of guy you want in the program, and all kinds of ability also. 4 stars, got a chance to be pretty good. He's not a can't miss. Nobody's a can't miss. Well, there's some can't misses, but Nick Marsh, good one. Highest ceiling, Nick Marsh also. Super sleeper, Raheem Johnson, just mentioned him. And Wyatt Hook, tight end. Top 120 in California. I think he'd be a top 10 in Michigan. Maquis Frazier, the running back from Frisco, Texas. Physical. I look forward to interviewing him someday. I can anticipate what kind of personality he is just by the way he plays. One cut gets north. And the way they play at his high school in Frisco, Texas, a lot of under center, 2 tight end, inside zone, outside zone, a lot like Oregon State. I can see why they looked at the film and said that guy can play in our system because that high school system was similar. And he's also just tough Texas rattlesnake of a linebacker as well, which can bode well at the running back position. Biggest miss, Tyler Cherry. They didn't miss a lot because they didn't have time to recruit a lot of players. You know, if you go back to, some of the initial commitments, the Reggie Powers kid from Ohio, from Centerville, ending up at Oklahoma, that would be one that got away. But, Jonathan Smith really never had a chance for him. That guy was already committed and decommitted and gone. But Jonathan Smith and his staff haven't had a chance to get in on a lot of recruits, and they finished on a lot of those. A lot of those they had a head start with, finished. Francis Brewu, the defensive tackle going to Pittsburgh, not real tall at 6'2", and he's a high school nose. Could it be a quick 3 or something? I don't know, but he's low to the ground and strong, and Michigan State tried to flip him, had a good shot at it, but Pittsburgh was able to close that one out. So biggest miss, Cherry, Brewu, I guess. Worst hair, that would be me. Question 5, Mike Michael from Alpena says, is it normal for a coaching staff to not be completed by now? Good question. Probably not. Michigan State still with 2 coaching staff positions remaining and need a safeties coach. And the other one, Jonathan Smith says still looking at what they might want to do with that. The special teams thing is still out there. He didn't say this, but I suspect they're looking at either having a full-time special teams coach or bringing in somebody with special teams experience and divvying it out among other assistant coaches. Rossi is defensive coordinator and linebackers coach right now. That's what they introduced him as a week and a half ago. Is it possible they could bring in a linebackers coach and Rossi could change what he does himself around a little bit? Possibly. Big question, of course, is where does Harlan Barnett fit? Harlan Barnett, a lot of indications a week and a half ago that he had been extended the job and took it, but that turned out to be false. I had that from, I don't want to say who, but someone who's connected to the program. But now I think Harlan, there's indications he wants to wait and see what other opportunities are out there. I'd heard that he was interested in other opportunities a few weeks ago, and now we're getting closer to the National Coaches Convention. Maybe he wants to go to the convention and see what's out there. The longer that goes, the more I'm thinking it might not be a match, because now you've got a coordinator coming in with Rossi. Rossi's going to want to have his own guys in there, right? Jonathan Smith wants to do what's good for the program, the guys that are in the program, and there's a lot of players that feel kind of tight with Harlan Barnett, but the more time that goes by, I don't know. And I'm just reading tea leaves on this. I've not heard it from anybody, but I think the more time that goes by, the more I think that might not end up being a match. But you're right. It's not uncommon. It is uncommon for it to go past signing day, I guess. We've only had signing day in mid-December for about 4 or 5 years. So I'm not sure what the usual trends are. Question 6, Eric in Troutman, North Carolina says, who are you most excited about in this class and who is the most underrated in your opinion? Most excited about, I'm going to put Makai, I don't know how to say his first name, Frazier, the running back from Frisco, Texas. For reasons I mentioned a moment ago, I'm curious to see what he's going to become because he's a little uncommon. Excited, curious, whatever you want to say. A guy that's not ranked real high as a running back, but I just think he's got some it factor there. Is just a north and south. He's not like a total power back, but 210, he's got some power at 210 pounds. Just the north and south downhill mentality and what he shows at linebacker. I'm just curious. So I'm excited to see what he is as a news person, wondering what he develops into. We mentioned Wyatt Hook earlier. He's got to expand into his body at 6'6", but catch radius on that guy is really interesting. He's got to show he can block. He's got to fill out into his frame. Underrated, Rakeem Johnson, offensive lineman from Idaho. Interesting. He says, any updates on portal entries that could return? Jacoby Windman, I'm hearing there's a good chance he comes back to Michigan State. Derek Harmon, I'm hearing good chance he probably does not. Zion Young, I'm hearing there's an improving chance, a better chance than 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, he was very despondent about the offers he was getting in the portal and needing to move on, whether Michigan State can match that. They're still getting that squared away, so there's a shot there. Others that are in the portal, Malik Carr, I'm not hearing anything about that, and that's going to be a curious one. Because Michigan State just brought in the best Pac-10 tight end. Malik Carr, if he wants to come back out of the portal, a lot of talent, but, even the past Michigan State coaches said that he tested their patience a lot. Gilmore said that. I think Kapilovic had some disagreements with him. And I don't know if Malik Carr wanted to stay or if he thought there'd be a lot for him in the portal. I'm not sure. But if he had not gone into the portal and if he had stayed at Michigan State, my advice would have been don't tick off the new coaches because page 1 of the new coach manual says find a very talented player that doesn't quite toe the line all the time and doesn't really show a lot of impetus to do everything, and get rid of that guy. That's page 1 of the new coach manual. And right next to it's a picture of Nick Saban with Batman Holman. D'Antonio D'Antonio had great retention of the players he inherited, except for one. I think his name was TJ Williams, a wide receiver that even Drew Stanton didn't get along with. Drew Stanton had to snap at him a couple times. TJ Williams lasted a couple weeks. And D'Antonio, D'Antonio can get along with anybody. He could get along with the Grinch. That's my second reference to the Grinch this week. As long as you're not wearing maize and blue, D'Antonio can get along with you. But even TJ Williams, who's very talented, had some really good moments, but page 1, day 1, find a talented player, make an example of him. So Malik Carr, got a lot of respect for him in a lot of ways. Get along with him in a lot of ways. Got respect for his talent and so forth. I wish him well. But if he had decided to stay at Michigan State, I would have said beware of page 1 of the new coach manual. He's in the portal. Michigan State's trying to recruit some players out of the portal. Jonathan Smith said some of them, not all of them. Makes you wonder. So Malik Carr's in there. I suspect he's going to end up somewhere else. Zion Young's in there. I had heard that Missouri came after him with a strong arse offer, among others. But I'm hearing Michigan State's talking to him, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Gino Vandermark, I don't know if something may have happened with him recently. A good solid player. I thought Wigginton's a good, solid, functional, proven, young offensive guard, which is worth a lot in the portal. He's going to end up at Illinois, is Wigginton. That's what he told me earlier today. I don't know if he announced that or not. Vandermark, I suspect he goes somewhere else. I don't know if Rutgers is in on him, but good, solid, young player that I think Michigan State would have liked to have kept. But he's in the portal. I've not heard that Michigan State has got much traction to keep him. Jerron Glover, I've not heard much about him. Wide receiver from Georgia, getting some interest from Southern schools. I heard Florida State was interested. Had a real nice season this year. Good player. Michigan State could use him. That might be one that Michigan State's trying to recruit back out of the portal, especially with Hawkins still around. Windman, they're trying to get back out of there. I think they will get him out of there. Chris Bogle's in the portal. Michigan State needs defensive ends, defensive linemen. I've not heard many rumblings about him, but I think they could probably use him. I've not heard anything about Charles Brantley. That's a curious one. He's in, then he's out, then he's in, then he's out. Anyway, question 7. Clark from Sylvania, Ohio. Might be the same guy that was over here in the comments area just south of the border in northern Ohio. He says, in the coming weeks, would you consider doing any film breakdown for Oregon State's offense and Rossi's defense? It'd be good to get your opinion on what we can expect to see next season. Good question. Yes, I've got that in the back of my mind. I've got it on the DVR, and I've got some notes. I just got to get it together and staple it together. I don't have the full thesis formed yet, but something I'm interested in doing. He says, extra question, what position groups do you think will be most important for the staff to target for the February signing period? Answer, defensive line. Defensive line. And, keep an eye on the kid for Detroit Catholic Central, Stone Chaney, that Jason Kaleb mentioned earlier, and there's going to be some others. Jonathan Smith says they're going to be turnover stones, looking for players. He expects some to be out there, and I would think defensive line would be one they will be overturning some stones. And that's going to be difficult because the football gods do not make many defensive linemen to begin with, especially defensive tackles. If you start overturning rocks everywhere, you can find some defensive backs and wide receivers. I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, maybe $1 a dozen, but defensive linemen, the football gods don't make many of them. So you can turn over a lot of rocks. It's going to be hard to find a Derek Harmon out there. And Derek Harmon was an underrated guy. I think we got a question about him here in a minute. Question 8. Hey, Jim, this is Mike from West Palm Beach, Florida. He says, any initial thoughts upon reviewing the new quarterback flip? Jesse, thanks. I mentioned him earlier. 6'4", has some mobility, not a lot. Has some athleticism, not a lot. Some arm strength, release. A lot of things need to be worked on. Utah State commitment. I've only seen the highlights. I'd like to see a full game. Someone who's going to give them some depth in the portal. I mean some depth in the pool, and the quarterback room pool, and they need some guys there in case of emergency. Do not expect him to be Trevor Lawrence as a freshman, right? Question 9, Thermo from On Top of Mount Elliott. He says, how good is Nick Marsh, and do you expect him to make an impact next year? Answer, I think he's really good prospect, chance to be a very good player. Reminds me of Donnie Corley a little bit. Donnie Corley was here, was really good, got into some snags, some trouble, but Corley was good. And I think Nicholas Marsh is similar. And I think as a freshman, he could be a 20-plus reception guy, which is a lot for a true freshman. Maybe more. Maybe more because for the first time in a long, long time, the Michigan State wide receiver room is thin. I'm curious about the Jalen Smith guy and Isaiah Johnson, 2 freshmen that I thought were good pickups at the 11th hour last year, some underrated 3-star receivers. Smith was on the travel team at Ford Field for the Penn State game. Did not see Isaiah Johnson there. I'm going to ask around a little bit. Those are guys that, if they're still around and doing well, they'll have an opportunity this spring. So I'm curious about those guys. Question 10. 2 questions from the artist formerly known as Mall 286, hailing from South Philadelphia, born and raised. He says, question number 1. I don't think he was born and raised there, but he's there now. He says, question 1, who are the 2 or 3 kids that Michigan State missed who should have been part of this class? Like I said earlier, not a lot of misses this year because Smith just been on the scene for about 3 weeks, had a very, very narrow scope, and had a high hit rate. So it's not like a lot of them were visiting and getting away. But I mentioned Francis Brenwu. Could have used him as a defensive lineman. Ended up staying at Pitt. They tried to flip him. Andrew Dennis, the offensive lineman from Mount Pleasant. I thought that he was uniquely athletic. There were some things that he did on film that I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen an offensive lineman do that before. For instance, Mount Pleasant last year as a junior, they ran, what was it? Some sort of screen. They ran a screen like to the non-receiver side and had him get out as like, a downfield blocker. It was really unique. I can't remember the specifics, but I was like, man, there's some athleticism right there to just scheme that up and for him to do it. So A.J. Dennis from Mount Pleasant, Michigan, ends up at Illinois. Offensive linemen are all projects to some extent. I heard a wise man once say, and I agree with that. Plus, it's the position. I don't have the data on this, but I swear there's more injuries at offensive line than any other position, and a lot of it's upper body injuries. My theory on that is because they have to, that football last year, especially with Mel Tucker, they would have like no contact days with wide receivers and defensive backs. No one's getting tackled. Running backs are not getting tackled. But offensive linemen, to teach them and to fit and to do their combo blocks and to get off and all those things, they have to get, have to put pads to pads over and over and over just to work on their craft, and clavicles and shoulders and ribs and backs wear out. And you just never know. Zach Huter, I thought, had all kinds of horsepower in his legs, but the upper body gave out and never really got on the field much for Michigan State. And I see him at camps a lot. He's coaching somewhere. So Andrew Dennis, I think he's got a lot of ability going to Illinois, but with offensive linemen, they're all projects, and a lot of them break. But Andrew Dennis is a guy that I think is uniquely athletic and would have done well for Michigan State to hold on to him, especially with the things Michigan State needs at offensive line. Don't blame him going for Illinois, though, because that's a good offensive line program. Question 2, on both sides of the ball, who is the recruit that we will be talking about 2 or 3 years from now? This is question number 2 from the artist formerly known as Mall 286 from South Philadelphia. He says, who is the recruit that we will be talking about 2 or 3 years from now? He says, I had to ask this considering that in 2020, and I don't remember this. I kind of remember it, but this sounds like something I would say. He's bringing up something that happened in 2020. He says, I had to ask this considering in 2020, we had this exact discussion and we had a lengthy chat about an upcoming big defensive lineman from Detroit with quick feet, one by the name of Derek Harmon, whom we compared to Mount Cody from Alabama. Fast forward 3 years, and college football superpowers are vying for him. You're exactly right. Derek Harmon was ranked like 26 in the state of Michigan, and I said that was crazy because he had quick feet and all kinds of strength. And my point then was he's a jumbo defensive tackle, and the football gods do not make many jumbo defensive tackles who can move their feet and are athletic and have body control and all those things. And he had a lot of bug versus windshield moments. And I'm like, this guy's number 26 in the state. And, ranked ahead of him were all these defensive backs and wide receivers and defensive backs and wide receivers and defensive backs and wide receivers. When there are that many defensive backs and wide receivers and defensive backs and wide receivers, then it's when they're that common, the demand is not as great. Supply and demand. There's an overabundant supply of wide receivers and DBs. There's a short supply of defensive linemen, which means there's a demand for them, which means they are valuable, which means when there's a good one, they shouldn't be ranked number 26 in the state. I looked at him, I'm like, how many 6'4", 300+ pound defensive linemen in the state of Michigan has the state of Michigan produced in the last 10 years? And I can only think of like 2 or 3 or 4. There was the guy that was Will Golston's teammate that went to Ohio State from Detroit. And there was the big guy that went to LSU, and not many others. Mozzie, what's his name at Michigan? Pretty good one. Mozzie Smith, as long as he's not committing any felonies. And there was it Taylor or Johnson or something like that from Muskegon? It was a good big one. But in terms of like 320 plus, very few. And this guy's got a bit. You just had to watch and see the guy's got football ability. He's a rare commodity, valuable, not number 26 in the state. And you and I talked about that back then. And he's done pretty well at Michigan State. Last year, good. This year, I expected more out of Derek Harmon. He just kind of had similar to the same season he had the year before. Maybe because he had to play too many snaps. I don't know. But not surprised he's getting a lot of attention in the portal because there's a shortage of what in the portal? It's hard to get a good big man out of the portal. So that's who we talked about 3 years ago when he was underranked. And this year I'm saying that about Jaden Walker, even though he's not a jumbo defensive lineman, because there are no jumbo defensive linemen that I know of in the state of Michigan this year that have plug-and-play ability. Not only did we like Derek Harmon, I thought there was a chance that he could contribute right away, which he did. So you're asking me, which of these recruits will we be talking about 2 or 3 years ago? First of all, I want to say that I say this every year, that in the old days before the portal, it was a good recruiting class if you had, a 67% retention rate. If 67% of a recruiting class earned at least 2 letters, not become starters, just earn 2 letters. If your attrition rate was 33% or less, it's a good class. And we used to do the recruiting analysis, the 4-year recruiting analysis at the Spartan magazine. And that 66, 67% target rate, classes usually met that. Michigan State classes usually met that rate about half the time. And half the time they didn't. And some that didn't, they would have an attrition rate not of 35%, sometimes over 50%. Sometimes highly ranked classes have a higher attrition rate for whatever reason. Maybe there's too many divas in those classes. I don't know. But in this class, I say it every year, all these guys are not going to earn 2 letters. And that's especially more true now in the transfer portal era when players are more apt to leave and go elsewhere. I heard someone, I think it was Cal's coach today, Wilcox, was talking about, he was talking with a coach, and they're talking about establishing depth. Actually, it might have been one of the meatheads on Meathead Radio. It was a Bobby Carpenter talking about, the old days, Tressel ball. Tressel used to like to have, at every position, he wanted a pair and a spare. He wanted 3 players at every position. I think it was Wilcox was saying, and Carpenter was agreeing that that's just not practical anymore because players don't want to be third string and redshirt and get developed and wait their turn. They're going to go into the portal, especially now when you go into the portal and they think they can make some money. But I think there's less money in the portal than players realize. There's good money from a few programs, like some of those well-funded, crazy, it just means more SEC programs, and a couple of others, but not many. There was an initial push in the NL space from a lot of programs, but a lot of people predicted that some of that money would fizzle out. I mean, that money's going to be strong in Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, most of the SEC. and some other places, but not a lot. And those places, when they get in bidding wars, they can throw a lot of money around to keep their players and get others. But it's musical chairs, and there's only so many chairs, and those chairs get filled up. And, your Indianas, your Illinois, your, probably Louisville, Virginia, North Carolina State, Boston College, Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, they're not going to be forking over a lot of money year after year after year. So if you don't land in some of those musical chairs at some of those places, hey, credit to Spencer Brown. He landed at Oklahoma. He got some of that oil money. He was a mediocre offensive tackle. Had a chance to be good and, it was okay. Goes in the portal and Oklahoma gives him 6 figures. Okay. Good luck, Oklahoma, against that SEC schedule. So there'll be some takers out there if you get in the portal and you win your musical chairs game. But over the long haul, getting into the portal, 1,000 people in the portal, 1,000 players in the portal are not all going to be making $100,000. They're not all going to be making $50,000. They're not all going to be making $5,000. Most of them are going to be making nothing. But people go in thinking they're going to get paid. They see Spencer Brown got paid. Zion Young's got a chance to get paid. Derek Harmon, but some good players. If you're starting at Michigan State and you go in the portal, yeah, you can get paid in the future. But in the future, if you're starting at Michigan State, you're probably staying at Michigan State because Michigan State's going to get their NIL together, I think. And those guys are in the portal because there was a coaching change primarily. And NIL communication was not great in October and November for good reason. Spartan Dogs for Life collapsed. It is what it is. So Michigan State's trying to recover that fumble and get that straightened out. So in the future, so this is a special case. So in the future, if you're a starter at Michigan State, I think Michigan State's going to have the wherewithal to retain those players and not lose a Peyton Thorne or a Keon Coleman. They lost those guys partly because of poor communication from the head coach. I got that from people deep in the Peyton Thorne camp. They really didn't hear from Mel Tucker after the spring game. I don't know what was going on there, but you got to play portal defense. As soon as Michigan State lost in basketball in the Sweet 16 to Kansas State, Tom Izzo was playing portal defense on every player in his program, from Hogarth to Akins to Sissoko to everybody, to Carson Cooper, checking in with every one of them every day, twice a day, every day. Portal defense on your own roster. And he's only got 12 guys, so it's easier for him to do, but it's still a headache. So that's what you have to get your position coaches to do that. You got to play portal defense. And Michigan State did not do that with Coleman and Thorne. Maybe Coleman would have left anyway. I don't know. But in the future, Michigan State starters, I don't think are going to be going to the portal a lot. Not like this year. And it's a crisis this year. And they've gotten some of them back, and they're still working on some others. So that's the nature of college football these days. More and more people go to the portal because nobody wants to hang around and have a pair and a spare. Where you develop depth, and that's how the 2013 Rose Bowl team was built. You look at that defense, how many of them redshirted? That's going to be hard to do these days. So in the old days, Michigan State's got 19 commitments. They signed 18. So out of 18, you can expect 6 of these guys. If you have low attrition, only 6 are going to move on. Okay, and that was in the pre-NIL days. So which of these do I think are likely to move on? I'm not going to say that. But I'm going to give you some people that I think are less likely to move on. These are players more likely to win at least 2 letters at Michigan State, or at least 2 letters at Michigan State. Nick Marsh and linebacker Brady Pretzlaff. Mercer Lunieski. And I would have said maybe not Charlton, but I think Charlton's come up that I think I'm going to put him in that also. So those 4. I like Jalen Thompson, the corner from Murfreesboro. I like both of those guys. Andrew Brinson coming in from Tampa. I'm going to put him in that category. I'm going to put Raheem Johnson in that category. And the other, Lusneski and Austin Clay, the wide receiver, and Wyatt Hook, and Keyshawn Williams, and Makai Frazier, and Jaden Walker. That's more than 12, I think. I think those are the guys most likely to earn 2 letters. Some of those others are, I'm not saying they're bad at all. I'm usually wrong on these things. So they could come in and develop and do a really great job. But those are the ones, in my opinion, based on film. Now, I don't know them personally. I know a little bit about some of their personalities. It might be a little bit reckless for me to put that out there, but I'm just keeping it real that every recruiting class, 1/3 of them are not going to be around in 2 years. And even more than that in the NIL days. So it's people that are like analyzing recruiting classes and saying, man, we got a great 24-man class. These guys are all good. They're all going to be good players. No, they're not. At whatever program that you follow. So you're asking on both sides of the ball, who are we going to be talking about 3 years from now? That's your question. I'm going to say, and you're asking one on offense, one on defense. On offense, I'm going to say Nick Marsh. Broken record, but the most likely guy that we would be talking about in 3 years. And on defense, I'm going to say Brady Pretzlaff. Good, solid, 6'3". Reminds me of Joe Bocci a little bit. And the way Rossi coaches defense, I could see him becoming. And it's a guy that Rossi recruited at Minnesota, so he liked him at Minnesota for that program, and I could see him sticking and doing well. So those are the two I think have the best chance pick to click. Let me see if I get the Brady Pretzlaff video going. Let's see if this will work. It's in the middle there, number. Is it breaking on me a little bit? Yeah, it's breaking up. I like that hill there at Gaylord High School. I wanted to go to a game there this year, and I didn't. Anyway, it's not working for me. Next time, I'm going to load all this stuff over to my other laptop and give it a shot. That bothers me. It makes me angry. So maybe we'll load these back up soon. All right, those are all the questions. I think I went through all the questions. We only had time for 12. I posted it and only had about 3 hours to take questions. Got one more question. Question 11 from John from Grosse Pointe. He says, why did Michigan State take 2 high school quarterbacks in the same class? He says, it seems to me like a senior transfer quarterback as a backup would be more valuable on the roster. Maybe will they get that later, he asks. Who do you think will win the freshman quarterback competition? So good question from John from Grosse Pointe. Having a senior transfer quarterback as a backup would be good if you can find a senior quarterback who wants to be a backup. Know what I'm saying? The guy that came in from Temple, I forgot his name already. What was his name? Anthony Rossi or something like that? Anthony Russo? Remember that? Peyton Thorne had won the quarterback job by the end of the 2020 season, but then they went into the portal and brought in Anthony Russo from Temple, who had 5,000 career passing yards. And, Peyton Thorne beat him out. Russo barely took a snap all year. Yeah, it'd be really great to have a senior like that come in, but he didn't come in here to be second string. He came in here to win the job. He just didn't win it. So would they be able to go out and entice a guy to come in and compete with Aiden Childs? I mean, there's quarterbacks are usually smarter than that. They're going to see that Aiden Childs is the guy, and they're going to realize that's not the place to be. So you can look in the portal and look to see what quarterbacks are out there. Maybe there's a walk-on guy in the MAC who wants to join the program, something like that. But scholarship guy who started somewhere else that wants to come in as a grad transfer to be a backup sounds good in theory, but you got a better chance of finding the Easter ferry. So I don't doubt that they might put out some feelers in that regard. And if they get someone like that, I'll give you a tip of the cap. But and they do kind of need more than 3. They've got Shorefire coming back as a walk-on. I think Shorefire has another year. And Shorefire's not bad. So if you have those 3 plus Shorefire, I don't know if you're going to get anything out of the portal that wants to come in and be a backup who's better than Shorefire. But Anthony Russo's not walking through that door. So I understand in theory what you're saying, and it would be valuable, but that guy's not out there. I'm quite certain. So you're saying, why take 2 quarterbacks in the same class? I think they're taking 2, and they're not expecting both to pan out. It's like the year that Michigan State took Kirk Cousins and Nick Foles. You don't really expect both of them to stay. It's like the year they took Brian Hoyer and Dominic Natale. Didn't Natale come here for a year or so? You bring in 2, let them have a competition, and then someone leaves. And everybody knows that. Sometimes a backup quarterback will stay longer than you expect. Noah Kim stayed at Michigan State respectfully longer than I expected. Credit to him. And he got his chance, short-lived chance. I think he could do well at Coastal Carolina if he gets over the pocket yips because he's got a lot of talent. A lot. I think he could do well. So, but usually a quarterback would have been gone earlier, kind of like when Hampton Fay was around for 2 years, and he actually stayed a half a year longer than I expected. So you bring in Jesse, you bring in Milivojevic, and chances are they're both not going to be here. One of them's going to be gone within 3 years. That's just the way it is. So you bring him in, you compete, and then if someone doesn't win that job, then they go to a lower level and try to make it there. And nobody has hurt feelings. That's the way it is. So that's why you bring in two, because you're just trying to recruit a competition. It's not like you're recruiting. I've always said that. You don't recruit a quarterback, you recruit a competition. Shorefire is going to be in there. If they can bring in one more and they've got a scholarship, maybe if it's the right guy, more than likely, you know how sometimes they bring in walk-on long snappers and walk-on kickers to come in and compete. Wouldn't shock me if there's some walk-on quarterback who wants to come in and be a part of it and throw his hat in the ring. But Shorefire, low-key, is kind of important to hang on to, now that I think about it. Speaking of which, important to hang on to is Jonathan Kim, the kicker. He's coming back, and all of a sudden he's an NFL prospect, and he's excited about coming back, and Jonathan Smith and those guys are pretty excited to have him back as a kicker. Let's go here to the comments area before we shut it down. It is midnight. We've had a long day. Signing day began 10 hours ago as we started this, and I've got one article done. I wanted to do more, but I might not make it. We'll see. Let me see what's over here in the comments area. John Thon with some positive comments. He says, I'm sorry, but I was hoping for the best with both Bobby Williams and Mel Tucker. Didn't ever see this outcome coming. Love the possibilities of a new rebuild, and again, hope Mr. Smith can be successful. Tommy Lloyd's daddy says, I just hope we can find the next Kirk Cousins. We need one. Tommy Lloyd says, Tucker was our best bet for recruiting, in my opinion. I don't disagree with that. I think he had ambitious recruiting ideas and initially had a lot of magnetism and energy, and he was relentless there for a few months, and then it just kind of dissipated, and people internally saw it. So, but he had possibilities. It just didn't work out. Tommy Lloyd's daddy says, we're losing kids to Indiana now. Yeah, the kid's from Indiana. He's from Center Grove, Indiana, and he had been committed to Duke. You go to SpartanMag, you can read about it. But you're losing a kid to home state Hoosiers, and he's got a quicker path to the starting job there than at Michigan State. That was the difference maker. John Thon says, why doesn't D'Antonio get more respect and appreciation? Well, he does from me. Everybody knows that. He says Tucker was smoke and mirrors, not impressed. He says Smith, very impressed. Tommy Lloyd's daddy says, okay, I guess that's not so bad. I think you're talking about he caught wind of the Indiana thing. John Elkey says, Tucker was always trying to hit a home run and struck out a lot. Smith will go for singles and doubles and then steal a base or two. I agree with that analogy. I think we're going to... So I didn't hear what happened with Ken Calvert. Passed away according to many on Twitter. Condolences coming in. Ken Calvert. Great radio personality in Detroit. Way back when I was a kid, he had something called KC in the Morning Crew with Dick the Bruiser type of guy and some voice impressionist. Eli Zarrett was part of that. It was legendary. That's back when FM radio ruled the world, especially in the morning. Ken Calvert, Detroiter, a big part of Detroit. Sad to hear that. Wish the best to his family for sure. John Thon says Alan Haller deserves much praise. Also great hire. JJ McKay says Haller has done a fantastic job with hires. John Thon says maybe not the appropriate time, but hockey hire has proven to be huge. Love Danton Cole, but Nightingale has got it rolling, and they are rolling. Miss my old days at Munn. They do, and they're number 7 in the country. Michigan State hockey, and they're playing in the GLI, the Great Lakes Invitational in Grand Rapids, December 28th and 29th. Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids. They play Ferris State in the first game, and if they win, they'll play the winner of Michigan Tech and Alaska in the championship game. Michigan State's not won the GLI in quite some time. This could and should be the year. Like I've said in the past, it's nice to have Alaska in it, I guess, but the GLI, now that it's in West Michigan, and Michigan is, the Wolverines have chickened out of it, and Michigan Tech, who runs the GLI, have told Michigan hockey to go pound sand, and the Wolverines are out of it, and the thing is moved to Grand Rapids. Michigan Tech, the people that organize it, I think it should be Michigan State, Michigan Tech, and Western Michigan every year to have that West Michigan aspect, the Western Michigan Broncos, and they do have some fans, and they like to take on Michigan State. GLI needs Western Michigan every year. It needs to be Spartans, Broncos, and Huskies, and then a fourth rotating team. And like I've said before, Meyer needs to become a title sponsor and pay for billboards on I-96, I-94, and 131 to tell people the GLI is December 28th, 29th, Grand Rapids. It's going to be fun. I'm planning to be there, but I've got in-laws, shouldn't say in-laws, got family Christmas on the 29th, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be there on the 29th. But we covered the Michigan State Notre Dame hockey series extensively first week of December, and would like to cover GLI the same way, but I'm not sure because my holiday dance card got a little screwy on me. But one way or another, we'll get that thing going in some way. Chris Foulin says, Comp, could you see DePape and By Job getting to start in Rossi's scheme? I could by playing the stand-up edge role and DePape as a bull rush type of a player, and is Jacoby Windman coming back? Hearing good things about Windman, not a done deal yet. Talked to him 2 weeks ago, and he's open-minded. He went into the portal, wanted to see what was out there. He got some attention, but he's graduating this week. And congratulations to Windman on finishing his degree at Michigan State. Interested in social work when his football days are over. Good leader, and a guy that this program could use over the next 12 months. Good shot with Windman. By Job and DePape, both very talented in some ways. The defensive end position, By Job has a lot of quickness and takeoff. Kind of struggled this year in his first year on the scout team. He's got to learn to play football. He's got some jets. Needs to learn a lot of the other things. And I've not really seen him. He hasn't been on the, we've not seen him as part of the travel team. I don't think I've seen him at all. Did DePape maybe got into the game against Central? Maybe Job did. But DePape, he's got ability. His high school film was really good. Needs to show that he's accountable and all those things. And once again, I caution, you don't want to be found on page 1 of the new coach's manual. They've got ability, but have to wait and see. Holy crap, I didn't even see this. See, this is why I need a producer. This is why I need some help. I need a Jamie type. We got Jeff Taylor. Holy cannoli. Jeff Taylor, Merry Holidays. Super chat, ringing the bell big time with a nice $100 tip here at the SpartanMag Live Tavern. Really appreciate it. I'd ring a bell if I had one. We had a viewer send in a bell that I could have rang, but I never really mounted it anywhere. But really appreciate that, Jeff Taylor. Appreciate your support. SpartanMag, he says, appreciate all the work and coverage, Comp, and team. Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff, once again. Chris Foulin says, what does a guy like Velling bring to the offense? Is he more of a threat at the tight end position, more like Malik Carr? Well, in this offense, they're running counter boots and drags all the time, and he set a school record for touchdowns. He's like one of those Iowa or Michigan tight ends. And, Malik Carr was always kind of hit and miss. He'd make some plays here and there, but then all of a sudden, he might round a route too much instead of breaking it off sharply. Velling's going to be good. Childs has to get things squared away. Pass protection has to be good. Run game has to be good to set up those counter boots, play action, and so forth. The Beaumont Tower there. Beaumont Tower in the background. We had some snow on campus a little bit this week, and it's down to just a little trace now because it's gotten up to 40 lately, and it's all going to be gone pretty soon. We need snow. Tim D says, hit the like button. Thank you for that. JJ McKay says, Velling has great hands and can seal edges, great on outside runs. Chris Foulin says, Hall, Turner, and Windman would be very good linebacker core. They would be very hard to run on up front with those guys. I would like to see Windman shed like 10 pounds. He would move more fluid. Good comment. Is there a chance that Windman ends up being a defensive end? I don't know. Could he do both? I don't know. That's what spring practice is going to be about, provided he comes back. Turner, I've got to go back and watch some more Wisconsin film. And Hall, I think, is going to make a lot of improvements. He made some freshman mistakes, but he made it at 100 miles an hour, and he was committed. Now the system's going to be a little bit more orderly, and I think Hall's going to take a big jump. There's no sophomore jinx with Hall. He's going to be a sophomore jump with Hall. Mark Webster says Aiden Childs is better than DJ Uiagalelei with way more upside. Clearly the better pick, multiple years to play. Good post, Mark Webster, and I do not disagree. Chris Leverett says, hopefully Blue Adams can drastically improve our defensive backs and usher in the return of the no-fly zone. Well, among other things, there will be less blowing of speakers. Defensive backfield was better this year in terms of fewer communication busts. A little bit, and it was better. But it's going to be more square and orderly now going forward. Mr. Whizbang says, love what Coach Smith is doing so far. No nonsense, no cheesy slogans. All right. I think that's going to just about do it. Then we had our guy Connor Johnson coming in and raising some ruckus. I didn't ban him right away. It was I feel bad for those Oregon State fans. I mean, they've got good fans. I appreciate the chainsaw and all that stuff. And it sucks for them that they got left out of the conference derby. The coach leaves. Recruits are gone. I feel bad for them. I do. It sucks. Noah says it would be nice for Michigan State to get back to being at least a top 6 Big Ten team with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Oregon ahead of us. Top 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Top 6? Doable. I mean, you got to beat out Iowa, UCLA, Wisconsin to do that. Hey, you get in the top 3 in the Big Ten, you're going to the playoff. And what you need to do is establish yourself as a 7-5, 8-4 program. If you're Michigan State, that needs to be base camp, which is not easy to do. You get to base camp, and then once in a while, when you've got a senior quarterback, some good skill position players, maybe some breaks in the schedule, maybe some of the heavyweights have a down year. Boom, you can win 9, 10, 11. That's how it's done. Winning 11 or 12 and staying there every year. Ohio State can do that, but it's not feasible for Michigan State from where I can see on a consistent basis. You get to that 8-4 base camp, and then with that, you will invariably graduate a quarterback and then take a dip down to 6-6, 7-5. That happens. Barry Alvarez had 6-6, 7-5s. Gundy at Oklahoma State has some 7-5s. D'Antonio had some 7-5, 6-6s. It's going to happen. You're not going to stay 11-1 every year like Ohio State at the best. So 8-4 base camp, you're going to have some dips, but 8-4 base camp, once in a while cycle up to 10, 11, maybe more, get in the playoff. That's where I think Michigan State is. Some of you people might think, that's ridiculous. We should be going for being 11-1 every year. If you don't aim for that, you're never going to be that. That sounds good in the comic books, but I'm talking reality. And that's kind of what Wisconsin did. They'd go base camp, then they'd jump up once in a while. All right, I think that's about it. My voice is about done. 3 hours here. We did 3 hours here. We did a 1 hour VCast. That's 4 hours. No wonder I don't have any articles written. Probably write some articles tomorrow. But then we got a basketball game also. There's a lot of content coming from that press conference today. Conan Dyke and those guys did a good job this morning. I think they're all in bed by now because they've had a long day. Anyway, that's about it. I appreciate all the, of course, I appreciate Mr. Turner with the big, handsome contribution to the tip jar. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody that's been hanging out this long. And I got the Matt Dorsey thing still up there. And I want to wish everybody a happy, merry, merry, merry holiday season. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and everything else. Hope it's a very joyous time. Tidings of comfort and joy. And peace on earth, goodwill to men and women everywhere. And imagine there's no war. Imagine it's peace. It's not hard if you try. Everybody have a great holiday season, and thanks for coming in and talking some football with us and recruiting, and we'll be back soon. Everybody have a merry holiday. Talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.